own thing, like come and do it. Like Roger, a one-man show. You've all enjoyed the music and chocolate yesterday, and that's the thing. Like come here and do your own thing. Which, by the way, reminds me that Peter hasn't taught you all about lightning bolt cards yet. I don't know when we're gonna do that. Maybe at just before the party, something like that. During the tournament, okay. During the chain goal tournament, if you want, you can while you're waiting at room 101, you can bug Peter about how to use a lightning bolt card, because I know that many Bitcoiners have not used lightning or bolt cards or seen how easy it is. And we have these collectible bolt cards that I think most of you have gotten in the bags, in the swag bags, and we have like a few at the dining room. Okay, that's fine. Um, are we on?
Queste sono le pile,
That's nice.
capito? Ci abbiamo le pile, ci abbiamo le pile.
Excuse me while we're plugging in again the cameras.
Poi ci
There's a
abbiamo i
bit of
microfoni.
work setting up again.
Dimmi solo quello là,
Oh, let me,
il treppiede, questo appenditelo.
let me do an intro of what we're gonna listen to. So we have Ethan with an exciting talk. Then we have Philippos, who is doing an analysis in market cycles and how they connect, they resonate basically with the frequencies of Bitcoin cycles. Then we have Professor Kostas Karasavas telling us about Giacomo's favorite subject, which is inscriptions and inscriptions and stuff like that, but it's from a computer science point of view, from a degen point of view. Don't get triggered. Don't be triggered. It's calm. It's fine. Yeah. And that's it. Those are the talks, and then we will have the chain duel tournament. I don't know who's gonna win. I don't know who's gonna challenge everybody else. I know I need to get a rematch from Ethan, but I'm not bugging him right now because he needs to set up the slides. And then we were supposed to have the spin the wheel and Jolt's rewards, but I don't know. Your time preference is so high. Everybody wanted their prizes, and you pretty much got everything already. So I don't know. We'll just give away the last stuff that we have, and but we are gonna spin the wheel and from Jolt's rewards. If in case you don't know what that is, it's this company right here, and I really like those guys. I don't know if you met them. They're in the US, and they're creating a system where any shop that you use, they can give you a percentage. They can plug in their system, their API basically, and they can pay you sats back. Okay, so that I believe that's a nice way to orange pill like normies, like no coiners, because they buy from a random shop. Okay, and they say, okay, here's an email, and here's where you can claim your sats. And they can say, okay, what is this? Suddenly they have Bitcoin. Okay, custodial solution, obviously, but they can withdraw the sats with Lightning and stuff like that. They're making a lot more things. And we have a spinner, which you will spin. Each one of you will spin the wheel, and you can win sats or a prize. Okay, it's a small prize or a small amount of sats. But who's gonna say no to free sats? I don't think that everybody here will say no. So get your Lightning wallets ready. I'm probably gonna, yeah, I think Marco is the best guy for this. We're gonna go afterwards, going to everybody, spin the wheel, and get the prize. Okay. Yeah. So we record in two locations so that you get the like. Oh, it's a bit windy, so there's a good chance that the voting accident tomorrow is an actual voting. I don't know if you've been informed of the risks, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, we're on. Okay, do you want this? Let me say a few words about Ethan. Yeah, he's the CEO of Bitaru. Okay, we don't know about Bitaru in Europe because Bitaru Europe hasn't started yet. Okay, it was supposed to have started. We had some setbacks, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's only a matter of time. Yes, fucking banks, obviously. That's it. That's it. He has the most bullish and toxic and Bitcoin maxi exchange on that side, on Oceania. Okay, on the entire continent, because Australia is like on the continent, like 3 countries. What is it? How many countries?
Australia is what?
Oceania?
How many countries are in Oceania?
Yeah.
Yeah, depends on.
Okay, it's not that many. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so you get the dominant countries, Australia. So he has the most bullish and toxic Bitcoin exchange in an entire continent. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I wanted to introduce you. And it's not a joke. He's actually a toxic Bitcoiner, like on Twitter and in real life. He calls the shitcoiners their face. It's refreshing. It's very nice. Very nice. But he's still lovable. He's still very huggable. And but I'm gonna get a rematch on Chain Duel pretty soon because he beat me last time. And now he's gonna give us a talk, which hopefully will wake us up from the coma that we're in. Okay, Ethan, come on. What's the title? Yeah. What's the title? Astronaut. Bitcoin. Ask what you can do for Bitcoin. Paraphrasing Kenny, I think. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you, George. Thank you, for you and your team for organizing this amazing party. We're having a great time. Ask not what you can do for Bitcoin, but ask not what Bitcoin can do for you. Ask what you can do for Bitcoin. So the question is, what can you do for Bitcoin? And this is something that was discussed over the years. It's of course this is not working. Now it is working. The images are too heavy. Is it downloading the presentation as we speak? It's supposed to load. Oh, Libra is fun. Yeah. No, it just went to the end, which is kind of in the end. Oh, good thing I remember the presentation. Technical issue. So basically, what can you do for Bitcoin? And here I'm referencing, and this was talked over the years, and Mir talked about a few years ago in her presentation. She started with asking, if you're not a developer, can you actually do something for Bitcoin? Closer. Oh, look, what's that? Yeah. So if you're not a developer, can you do something for Bitcoin? And she did online research, and then she did a presentation in Unconfiscatable 2020. It's still available on YouTube. You can still see it. And of course, you got many answers. You can do many things, as we know. You can do podcasts, you can do vlogs, you can do art, you can do you can write books, you can do many things. Whatever your skill set is, you can actually do something for Bitcoin if you want. Then click, supposed to be the next photo, is showing Michael Saylor in Bitcoin Atlantis, which funny enough, they said Atlantis was here, not in Madeira. So I was in the Atlantis Museum the other day. And Saylor said what you can do for Bitcoin is orange pill people. Because if you orange pill people, you're making the world a better place. But me, if you ask me what you can do for Bitcoin, I will tell you that, this photo works. Oh, this photo works. Now it works. Great. So I'm like an ant, there is this phrase that like my world is so narrow, I can only talk about myself because I'm like an ant, so narrow like an ant. So I'm like a little ant looking at the universe of possibilities, and I cannot tell you what you can do for Bitcoin. You can make games. Yeah, I see you're smiling there at the back. You can make games for Bitcoin. You can make many things. So instead of telling you what I think you can do, because I don't know you and you know you, I'm going to tell you what I did for Bitcoin, and hopefully that will give you ideas and will give you things to think about, and the big words inspire you to do more for Bitcoin, because I do believe that and I think we all believe that Bitcoin is a good force in the world, and we want to support as much as we can. So less photos now, so it should work probably better. Once upon a time, I had great offset. Okay, less than 5 people in the world knew that I had Bitcoin. Nobody knew, other besides them. I did not go to any Bitcoin meetups. There were no Bitcoin meetups, I think, back then. But I thought that people that do go later over the years, I thought they're crazy if they go to Bitcoin meetups because of obstacle issues. So I was just doing my thing. I bought a Mt. Gox. The only thing I knew was to withdraw. I withdrew. So that's why when Mt. Gox crashed, I didn't have anything there. Over the years, I even traded a little bit. It started in 2018 actually, after the 2017 bull run. I discovered arbitrage trading. So like only Bitcoin, basically, you buy in one exchange, you sell another one within like, a few seconds manually, and you make 3 to 7%. It was crazy. It was completely crazy. So I did it a little bit, and I kind of discovered there were only like, a few exchanges in Australia. All of them were bad. All of them were bad. And I kind of started thinking, oh, this exchange has this good feature, that exchange has that good feature. And I kind of wanted, I had like a little anon account on Twitter, and I wanted to kind of make like, a tweet storm, like a widgets, of all the things. Oh, I wish I had this exchange, like a dream exchange. And then I told this to a friend of mine. Luckily, I told this to a friend of mine. And he said, oh, I know exactly who to introduce you to. And he introduced me to his guy, and together we sat and we had this big meeting that we are still remembering and talking about. And that's how Bitaru was created. So instead of making a whinge, a list about all the things that we want to have in exchange, we just built it. So that was the idea, and the tagline is Bitaru built for Bitcoiners, because that was the idea. We built it for ourselves, what we want to have. So we started building Bitaru. My hopes, of course, went down the drain. I thought I could be, no. Everyone wanted to know who's behind it. We had to, put a face, a pretty face, and that was it. Everybody for years, I think even today, they only know me. Ask them who's the number 2, number 3, and 4. They don't know anyone. Great, one-man show. I do everything. Apparently, I'm a great dev as well. No, but so that was like a bit mad, from it was weird, of course we put some kind of protections around it, so if somebody comes to me, with a wrench attack, they cannot get the Bitaru funds, because we thought about it. But so there were like a few downsides to this story, but with this, this came out to opportunity, and the opportunity was that I was invited to join the Bitcoin Moon Fund. The Bitcoin Moon Fund is an Australian Bitcoin charity. Okay, the idea is to support Bitcoin. Okay, so the original goal, the BMF goal, BMF stands for Bitcoin Moon Fund. I like to think it's a bad motherfucker, but both of them are true. The original goal was to support Bitcoin. So, for example, there are many people that are building beautiful things for Bitcoin, and we just wanted to, give them money because we had sponsors that, that's what they wanted to do. What they wanted to do for Bitcoin is to give, Bitcoiners money because they're doing great things. Great. So that was the original goal. However, that's not allowed. Australia has many rules, and one of them is that you cannot have a charity for whatever reason. You have to choose a specific reason. The only reason, the only cause that actually was applicable is education. So, okay, so we have to give only to Bitcoin educators. Oh, great. There's a lot of Bitcoin educators in the world. We can give to all of them. Oh, no. The Australian Charity and Non-for-Profit Commissioner says geographical limitations apply. So, okay, so we can donate only to Australian Bitcoin educators. Okay, so this is who we're donating to. However, if there is a charity somewhere in the world that has similar purpose to us, for example, an American charity that also advances education about Bitcoin, like OpenSats, hint, we can donate to them, or we can donate to their projects. So we're doing that too. So basically, we donate only to Australian Bitcoin educators or to registered charities with a similar purpose. Okay, great. So how are we actually supporting Bitcoin education? One is donations and grants. It's easy. We just give people money. Great, everyone's happy. The second, we sponsor. Okay, so I'm going to show a few examples soon, but we sponsor events, obviously in Australia, and we give interest-free loans. I'll give another example for that soon. So a partial list. Sorry, the funding. Where does the funding come from? The funding, we provide services. So, for example, you can come to us, if you're a friend and you want, an invoice, you can hire us for a consultation. Oh, should I buy Bitcoin? Yes, $10,000 invoice. Hey, everyone's happy. Okay, so we do that too. We provide services. The second is donations. If you're a company, you can say, oh, I donated $10,000 to BMF, and it's tax deductible to you if you declare it, publicly, because it's a marketing ploy, okay, a marketing play. Sorry. So great. So we accept donations that can be tax deductible. How do we use those funds? So the first thing we did, it's funny because this book is also here, but the first thing we did is I contacted Gigi, and he signed, over the weekend, he signed 210 copies. Now I just asked him to sign, right? But it's Gigi, right? So he couldn't just sign. So he signed, and he put the blog height, and he put the Moscow time. of it on each and every book. So each and every copy is unique because the multiple time keeps changing, and the blockchain every 10 minutes keeps changing. And then we gave those 210 books. He said that I broke his hand during that weekend because he did so many, and we gave those books to Bitcoin meetups attendees. So we sent them to Sydney, to Perth, to Adelaide, to Melbourne, and Brisbane, and whoever came to the meetings, the first 210 people in those meetings got those books. Everyone's happy, great. The second thing, there's a guy called DJ Booth. We don't know who he is. He says he's Australian, so we believe him. And he builds all kind of cool online tools. He builds like a calculator for Bitcoin, like a child pay for parent calculator, and he builds a blockchain explorer. He builds all kind of things free of charge, open source. He has a Tally coin, which is a way to raise money. Again, 100% non-custodial, you get all the money. So we donated to him and basically covering his hosting costs, which is a few hundreds per year because he has all these things happening there. Richard James is another Australian. He did 3 movies about Bitcoin. One of them is the petrodollar, and again, same story. He doesn't like the YouTube, so he doesn't host it there. He hosts it on his own website. Very expensive. So we have our own instance of being we're doing every business. So of course, the only thing we know is their XPub. All the rest, they keep the money, nothing to do. And if they need help with setting up because they're noobs and don't know how to do it, then Katan from Ministry of Nodes is helping them free of charge. The next thing we're doing, OMG stands for a 1 million grant. So every month for the entire year, we said, hey, who do you think, which Australian Bitcoin educator should get $1 million sats soon, million sats this month, and whoever got the most vote that month won. Great. Another thing we're doing is the Bitcoin Bush Bash. So there's the Bitcoin Bush Bash, which is like a conference in Australia, very known, very lovable. You just come, there's no fee. I mean, it's going to be in this place. You just come, and that's it. I mean, you take care of your own accommodation. There are talks there, pure signal, beautiful event. Happens 3 now going to be, spoiler soon 4 times also in WA. So it's 3 different states in Australia, and we are covering all their costs. So we're paying for the whole hire, we pay for the website, we pay for the domain, all their costs are covered by BMS. And last but not least, Australian Bitcoin industry body. We basically gave them the interest-free loan, and they, over the years, they slowly repaid it back once their members start paying. So, the Australian Bitcoin industry body, I'm also involved there. So, in the Australian Bitcoin industry body, but what happened is that a couple of years ago, we had in Australia, it's called there was a crypto industry body, and they contacted me and saying, hey, would you like to come to the meeting with Austrac, with the regulator? And I'm like, why are you inviting me? So we're having the meeting with them. I said, why aren't they inviting me? He said, oh, that's how it works. Okay. So I just came. And my first question was to Austrac, hi, why was I invited by Blockchain Australia and not by you guys? He said, oh, that's how it works. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we don't talk to members directly. We talk to the industry body. I said, oh, okay. So we opened an industry body. So we opened the Bitcoin industry body in Australia. So all the Bitcoin exchanges, because we are very fortunate in Australia, there are 5 Bitcoin exchanges, Bitcoin-only exchanges, 4 are brokers, 1 is exchange, and we opened our own Bitcoin industry body. So that's how the need to it became clear. We are since meeting with them twice a year with Austrac, with the regulator. We're discovering that they're not, faceless monsters that want to, kill Bitcoin, and they discovered that we are not the crazy people from Twitter. So it's very interesting for both parties, and we're both learning a lot from it. And we are also we're not changing a lot. I like to think that we're making a small dent, so like we're changing 1% of their perception. It helps. For example, in Australia, the use of unhosted wallets disappeared because we said with them, we explained to them that it's stupid. It just says it's always hosted by someone, right? I'm a person, right? It's not unhosted. So they changed it to either self-hosted, which we're okay with it, or what we less like because it shows a bit their intention, external wallets. Okay, external to what? External to their systems. Okay, so it's not great, but at least it's way better than unhosted wallets. The goals of ABIB, the Australian Bitcoin Industry Body, are A, is meeting with Austrac, B, meeting with government and affecting their policies, C, mainstream media. And what we did thus far is, as I said, we have regular meetings with Austrac. We submit responses and statements to government and to OSRC on various issues because they have to, by law, say, hey, we're going to do this law. What do you think? And we tell them what we think. They have to hear us, and sometimes they have to read it, and then they sometimes they invite us to talk in panels and talk to them about it. Yeah. What? It's not common in Greece?
Of course not.
Okay. Again, they eventually do what they want, but at least like we have a voice. We met with the El Salvador embassy and officials from their Bitcoin office. That was fun. We did it in video, so both with their, with their ambassador in Australia, but also with their Bitcoin office in El Salvador. That was a lot of fun. And I think maybe the most important thing is that we united the Australian Bitcoin platforms under a single banner. Because before we had a bit of infights, we were saying like, oh, every customer to go to Amber is actually a customer that doesn't go to Bitaru, stuff like that. But now we're like there's way more customers, to take from crypto industry, and there's even more customers that are completely no coiners at the moment. So I think that kind of stopped all the infights. We have our own groups. We go there, we talk at different levels. You can be sponsor or member, or you can be on the board. You can be executive position there. So I think that was really, really important. And we published our manifesto, which is Bitcoin and crypto. It's something that we're pushing a lot, of course. The HODL Act, something that not a lot of not all Bitcoiners agree with us on that, but we think that look, governments, with all their fiat, Ponzi scheme, they're still holding gold. So we think they should also hold Bitcoin. Ideally, theoretically, for the benefit of the people in the future. So we're pushing the HODL Act. We're pushing for financial education, because basically, we're not getting any financial education in schools, not proper one. And financial self-sovereignty is something that, the system thinks that self-hosted wallets, are dangerous or risky because they don't know what's happening there. We're thinking it's risky to trust somebody else. So we're pushing, financial self-sovereignty, which, of course, affects many, many, many things. What's next? So my master plan, which is why I'm here in Australia, in Europe and not in Australia, is because I want to bring pretty much all of those things here. So we're working on bringing Bitaru. Bitaru was ready to launch in December, right before Christmas. It was beautiful. We were so happy. And then the payment processor said no. So they didn't say no just to us. They said we're not accepting any new digital exchanges. Just like a blanket no to everyone. So okay, so we went to somebody else, same story. We went to somebody else, same story. We actually found somebody who said, oh no, we have someone. Actually, we have someone. And they were told, like we started the onboarding, and just like 2 weeks ago, we had a video and told us, look, and we were told from July 1st, no more new businesses, and from January 1st, next year, shutting down the existing ones. So this is not a coincidence. What's happening now in Europe, it's happening the same in Australia. In Australia, if you're now, let's say, a Swan Bitcoin, wants to come to Australia and open an exchange, yeah, they can register and open an exchange. They're not going to get any banking because the banks in Australia are the same policy. Existing, okay. New, no. So, we got now debanked, by the way, in New Zealand, also a few weeks ago. Again, personal, the payment processor said, much problems with the bank, we just can't do it anymore. We have enough, business outside the crypto space. That's what they call Bitcoin and crypto space. And so we kind of think it's part of the now they fight us stage. So we're saying that. So Bitcoin, Bitaru Europe is getting delayed, but it's something that definitely I want to bring. If it's not happening by the bull run, it's not going to happen. I'm saying it already. But hopefully, the bull run is going to wait for us, and we're going to launch before, and everyone's going to be happy. The next thing that I want to bring over is to have a European Bitcoin industry body. So I spoke with a few Bitcoin operators in Europe, and what they said is like, there is no European regulator. Every country has their own regulator. I said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because if we have a single banner, then yeah, okay, we can go talk to different regulators and we can have a voice if we talk to mainstream media. So I think it is good, and then also it unites also the Bitcoin industry. And I think it's important, and it would be lovely to bring also Bitcoin charity. What is this? Yeah, I know Mika. Yeah, but if every regulator in that country needs to. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, which is great. I'm looking forward to Mika because then you can promote to everyone. Yeah, yeah. But we're ready. We are ready. The app will be in Greek, everything. It's going to be beautiful. But yeah, banks are not fun. Will be great to bring also the charity, but that requires sponsors. Okay, so I mean, when and if the time will come, I'll speak with whoever I can to get some sponsors and to do the same thing. I think it's beautiful. It's not large amount, but it's beautiful, and it just kind of gives motivation. Any questions? Thank you very much. Yay. You have a question? Too late now. Okay, one second. Yes, any question?
Would you give grants to anonymous developers?
Anonymous developers that develop games with 5% commission? No, general question, right? If they identify Europeans and they are, again, if we're taking exactly the European model, the same model moving into Europe, then yeah, if they are European Bitcoin educators, they develop stuff that are for education, and yes.
My question was, you mentioned that one of the factors that the grantee is anonymous, right?
Yes. Yeah, but he developed an educational course. Yeah. If he identifies as Australian or as European in this case, then yeah, sure. Yeah, we don't need KYC for that. Giacomo can tell you, KYC is not good. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, back to thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey guys. Okay, so I'm here once again to tell you that if you are joining the hike tomorrow morning, please talk to me because I'm trying to put together transportation and I still don't have all the names on my list. So if you haven't approached me yet, live, person to person, you're not joining the hike tomorrow. Okay, sorry to break it to you.
Or they walk back.
Or I don't know, you have to figure out a way to transport yourself or teleport yourself to the beginning of the hike because we are not starting from here. Somebody needs to take you there to the starting point. The hike and the boat can be combined. Talk to me. We are here live in physical person. So yeah, we are continuing with the talks.
Let's find the slides. We need one of the contributors.
We are very happy to have one of our own. He has been in many Bitcoin meetups so far. A professor from Greece. We're setting him up.
Ci vuole andare alla tua perché la dirà lei, se no non si può andare perché non si parte.
Joseph Karasavin talks to us about storing data, inscriptions, and Bitcoin resiliency. Yes.
Right.
And you're from Thessaloniki? He's from Thessaloniki, the same city that I come from. This is not Athens, it's the second biggest city in Greece. I'm very happy to have a fellow person from the same city that I come from, not from Athens, from Thessaloniki. This is further away from Athens from here. We came by plane, not by boat. So yeah, are you ready with the flight?
The meetup on the
I'm happy we have a software engineer helping us with the setup.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about storing data on the Bitcoin blockchain. Talk a little bit about some implications with regard to the blockchain. The talk is tries not to be technical, but there are several aspects that I try to simplify so that you get the Is it off? Oh, okay. So that I want to make sure that you get a high level idea, and hopefully you will do. Okay, so first I'm going to explain some fundamental concepts. Probably most of you know them, but I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page so that we follow the next slides. Then I want to we go through several different ways of storing data and how you actually do it, but again at a high level. And finally, there's some discussions, and we already discussed about some of these subjects, but we can take another go. Okay, so most of you will know that a transaction is just some inputs and outputs. Inputs are the funds that you want to spend, outputs are where you are sending the funds, right? And when we are sending funds somewhere else, we effectively, so if someone sends funds, I don't know if you see the slides well, but I'll, yeah. So somebody sends some funds to Alice in this example, and when we say that somebody sends funds to Alice, what is happening behind the scenes is someone has locked some funds with a Bitcoin script in such a way that only Alice can unlock with her private key. This is the typical scenario of locking funds. There are several different ways of locking funds, with a multi-sig, with more complicated scripts, and so on. So when Alice wants to spend these funds, she will use her private key, she will unlock, she will provide an unlocking script, right? And the unlocking script will unlock the funds and send them to the outputs that she chose to the people that will receive these funds. So then you have another transaction with two new outputs. These outputs have not been spent yet, so there are unspent transaction outputs. So that's how we call them. It's UTXOs. And one important aspect of UTXOs is that every single node in the network has to actually keep track of all the UTXOs, or of all the UTXOs set. Every single transaction output that has been spent, right? Okay, then I want to talk about validity and standardness. So there are several rules, several layers of rules governing Bitcoin, in particular transactions in our case. The core rules are the consensus rules. Consensus rules more or less say which transactions are valid and which are not. If they are not following consensus rules, they cannot be into the blockchain. They cannot go into the blockchain because they will be rejected. Some examples are the Coinbase reports. Another example is that the outputs of the transaction has to be cannot be more than the inputs of the transaction. Obviously, not where we will be generating money. And several other fundamental rules, right? Standardless rules, the next layer, are rules that have to do with transaction propagation. So some examples, so they're responsible, they will determine network health and efficiency of the network. Some examples are what kind of locking scripts are allowed in the network. Another example is what's the size of the transaction. Right? There are no limits in the consensus rules. Standard rules define the limits of the transaction. So that's why a miner can actually add this 1 megabyte block, or nowadays a 4 megabytes weight block. And the final layer is policy rules. Policy rules are rules per node. They are local for the nodes, and they're responsible for node health and efficiency. And some examples are the mempool size, for example, the size of the node, or when transactions are rejected in the network, in the mempool. So a valid transaction does not need to be standard. Right? Only a miner can include a non-standard transaction in the blockchain. users can only submit standard transactions. They have to follow standard rules unless they convince a miner to get the transaction, right? By the way, whenever you're going to interrupt me, just do, I don't mind. We can elaborate if something is unclear. Okay, so storing data. So the classic, until recently, op-return was the only way of storing data that wasn't frowned upon. Maybe it still is the only way that is not frowned upon. It's an opcode that allows you to specify an output that takes 80 bytes nowadays. So you can store 80 bytes. There is in the consensus rules, there is no limit for a transaction, and there is no limit for an op-return. So an op-return can be 1 megabyte. So a miner can create an op-return with 1 megabyte of data. It's the 80 bytes that I mentioned. It's a standardness rule, and it applies to us, at least not to everyone. You can also have only one op-return as a user, but a miner can do several op-returns. It is transaction. Op-return is intended for storing data, so developers made sure that it's ignored. It's not knows and do not have to keep track of it in the UTXOs. So it does not blow the UTXO set at all, and it's just store some data and nobody cares for it from then on. So this is storing data directly. There are some more weird ways of storing data now, indirectly, and that was the case in the past. They were using that quite a lot. So one example is, so coin-based transactions create bitcoins. They don't have inputs. So inputs are empty, so you can put stuff there. So miners typically put their the name of the mining pool and other data. It's also used for extra nonces for the mining process. But you can also put, I think it's about 100 bytes, and you can put there is space for putting extra information. And obviously, the most well-known coin-based transaction is the one in Genesis block that's Satoshi included. And inside the input, he provided some hexadecimal that if you convert them to ASCII, you get the famous message that Satoshi put in the blockchain, right? You don't see it there, but everybody knows it. Okay, we can also store funds in fake addresses. So as I said, so this is a transaction which has 3 or more inputs. In this case, you can see only 3 of the inputs. Highlighted by red is the actual public key hash of the transaction, or let's call it a public key for simplification. So it's the part that says who can unlock this script. So you see there are 3 locking scripts, and there is a placeholder there for the public key hash, which is 20 bytes. And this 20 bytes normally corresponds to the hash of the public key, which corresponds to the private key, and that's how the private key can spend these funds later on. In this case, we put arbitrary data there. We don't put an actual public key hash. And this arbitrary data, if we collect them and convert them to ASCII again, it's just hex. Again, they provide some data that we store. In this case, it's the beginning of a quotation from Nelson Mandela. You can see the rest in the screen, hopefully. So it says there is nothing like returning to a place that remains unchanged, etc. So this transaction has 5, 6, 7 outputs, and the whole quotation is there. So fake address is an unintended use, of course, right? It is not supposed to happen, but people found a way to store data indirectly without asking anyone. and there is no one to ask anyway, so we just did. So similarly, when you create a multi-sig output, a multi-sig locking script, you effectively have to specify the public key of the participant, which takes some space, right? So in this example, you have a single output that have 3 public keys, because it's a 2 out of 3 multi-sig in this case, 3 public keys, and we have used the hexadecimal. We replace the hexadecimal of the actual public keys to arbitrary hex that again converts to something that we want to store on the blockchain. In this case, it's the beginning of the Tibby gate data, which is 2.5 megabytes of storage. Right? Not happening in 2012, 2013. It's pretty old. And obviously 2.5 megabytes doesn't fit in one block. So if you see the beginning of the instructions, the beginning of the file actually have instructions, it actually points you to another transaction ID that you can download a tool that will help you download the KB data. And there are lots of stuff like that going on with the blockchain. Again, another unintended use. And people did that in the past. They don't use them nowadays a lot, but they can easily do it with a taproot locking script as well. Right? Nothing prohibits new transaction type being used like that. So these are some other examples, just to give you an idea of what was happening back then. So here we see someone storing the prayers in the religious tool. Everybody knows who he was, storing prayers, and people were getting annoyed about it, and they were actually chatting through the Coinbase inputs. So miners were chatting. People were replying and saying, "Oh, come on, look, leave the blockchain alone. God is not real," and whatever. And then they would reply back, and they were rickrolling them and doing stuff like that. So other examples include the Bitcoin image, Nelson Mandela image, and several of his quotations. There's actually a big tribute on him, quotations, his background story, lots of stuff. Other examples are many more images, the original Bitcoin paper is there, more tributes, the code for a crypto simulator is there, religious text is there, you can find everything. This is not, it's a very small list of what is on the blockchain right now. And you can find more examples in Keep Series blog, which is excellent. And yes, lots of storing already. All of these indirect ways of storing data, of course, bloat the UTXO, because the actual transaction can never be spent, the output can never be spent. Nodes have forever to keep track of it and manage it. Right? And that blows the UTXO set, so the memory over every single node in the network, and so it's that's why I say it is frowned upon. It's bad for the network, and people are not happy. Overtime is the preferred way of storing stuff, but as we said, it's only 80 bytes. So briefly, in 2014, what came to, so nowadays we call it overtime wars. What happened with these inscriptions is a repetition of what happened back then. Right? We have already seen this display before. So what was happening is that we had several meta protocols that was encoding information with Bitcoin transactions, information that has to do with higher level protocols, right? Or meta protocols, layer 2 protocols, if you want. Counterparty was one of the main ones, and in 2014, and back then op return was only 40 bytes, right? And counterparty needed more than 40 bytes, and they couldn't store it in an op return. So what they did is they used a multisig that we discussed before, right? but developers and users weren't happy about that because it was bloating the UTXO, as we said, so they complained. And counterparty said we can store it in 40 bytes, so we keep on storing it on multi-sigs unless we increase the operator size to 80 bytes. The Bitcoin developers back then didn't allow it. So a counterparty kept on publishing with multi-sigs. And then there was the suggestion of filtering this transaction or censorship, depending on your view on it. Filtering this transaction so that because you can when you encode the metal protocol on Bitcoin, you have to typically put a magic number that identifies that it's coming from counterparty. Right? So it's pretty easy to do this identification and pretty easy to filter this transaction. So they did that. They filtered some of the miners, filtered the transactions, and then counterparty just changed this sequence, and they could keep on storing on the multi-sigs. So the people with the filtering nodes had to update their filters, and so on and so forth. Now it's coming back.
Probably you have to enter the password.
Password is coming.
So there was a game of filtering and changing the way of storing the data, filtering again, and it didn't really work. At the end, in 2016, in Bitcoin Core version 3.12, they increased the operator size to 80 bytes. Counterparty was happy, everybody was happy, and counterparty transactions was now ignored by the UTXO set, so everything is good. As we said, there were tons of transactions happening back then, and nothing's changed in the Bitcoin protocol. You can still use the exact same methods to store data now, if you are willing to pay the transaction fee, of course. And because transaction fees increased, the hype of storing data like that kind of diminished slowly, steadily, slowly. And even though you can do it now, I doubt anybody is doing it other than for fun. No major blocks of data being stored this way anymore, as far as I know, at least. But then in 2017, SegWit was introduced. So SegWit was primarily to fix transaction malleability, but for our purposes, we are concerned about the block size increase that happened as well. So there was a block size increase. So SegWit, what it did, they removed the unlocking script of the transaction and they put it after the transaction. So they kind of changed the structure that the transaction had for the new blocks. All blocks obviously don't see any change. But there was an additional data after the traditional transaction structure. Unlocking script was called witness. It's called witness in SegWit, so they more or less removed that part. And the witness part, so the unlocking scripts, has a 75% discount in transaction fees. So it's much cheaper to store, to use the witness data. One of the reasons they did that was that they wanted to give the incentive for people to use SegWit because overall the transactions were cheaper. Right? For other reasons as well, but one of the reasons was that. So effectively, the theoretical maximum of a transaction after the SegWit upgrade was 4 megabytes if everything in the block was unlocking, was a witness script, was an unlocking script, which is not really possible if you think about it, really, is it? Because you have outputs. Outputs are not witnesses, so they have some space there. But they don't get the discount. So if every single transaction was a SegWit transaction, you get about 2.8 megabytes for a full block effective size, right? Okay, so SegWit So the maximum transaction size, even before SegWit, was 100 kilobytes. You can have more than 100 kilobytes for a transaction for the users, right? As we said, miners can do any transaction size they want. So for SegWit, this was increased to 400 kilobytes. So a user can create a 400 kilobytes for block weight, right? And the miner can create 4 megabytes of block weight transaction, right? A single transaction. And the script size in SegWit was increased to 360 bytes, which was an increase from the legacy transaction. And it was also limiting the consensus rules, which was 10,000 bytes. So, yeah, okay, maybe we'll come back on that. And then recently, Taproot came along, and among several changes, they removed the maximum script size limit. They removed it completely. So for Taproot, you don't have a limit. So effectively, for Taproot, the script size can be as big as a transaction, which is 400 kilobytes, right, for a user, or 4 megabytes for a miner. So only the limit change, nothing else. So inscription was based on that, as we will see later on. They took advantage of that, the removal of this limitation to store huge amount of data. But you could do that already with SegWit, but it will be 3,600 bytes per output. Right? Of course, these limits were there they were removed for a good reason, because more sophisticated scripts were supposed to happen, and they will happen. For example, things like BitVM needs huge amounts of BitVM. Potentially would require a lot of space. Anyway, back to inscriptions. So inscriptions again is an indirect method of storing data. Indirect in the way that it was not intended to store data. The reason they exist is a different one. But they found around a trick to circumvent. So let me go through the example. You have to do 2 transactions. The first transaction doesn't matter a lot. The second transaction is a significant one, which is unlocking the first transaction. And the unlocking part is the witness part. So it will get the 75% reduction. And it can be as large as 400 kilobytes for users and 4 megabytes for miners. So they include the data in the unlocking script. And the interesting thing is that it does not bloat the UTXO set, because the UTXO is spent, and the witness script, the data is stored with the second transaction, which spends the UTXO set. So the data is in a spent output, so nodes need to keep track of it. This is important because if this was not the case, the outrage from the community would be even bigger. So the people that created inscription say that, oh, it's a pretty clean way of storing data. We don't blow the UTXO set, nobody cares, and we pay our transaction fee. So this is an example. I'm sure you cannot see here. It's a snippet of Bitcoin script. Can you see it? No. Okay. So I'll describe it. So it's nothing fancy. So it's an if clause using an if clause. So it's a programming concept, if else, right? It's an if clause, and before that there's an op false. So that's more or less the Bitcoin execution engine. What we do, the scripting engine will read the false initially, and then it will go to the if statement. And because the previous value was false, it will just ignore the if clause. everything in the if clause will be ignored completely. And you cannot see that the if clause more or less says that an ordinal is, so this data is an ordinal. The type of the ordinal is text, could be video, image, they use meme types to do that. And then it's the data, the actual data, split it in 520 bytes, but it's continuous, 520 bytes until the whole, you fill up the 400 kilobytes of space. Okay, here's the same script again, a bit bigger, maybe you can see it. So the first part, the if clause is completely ignored by the engine because it's false, so it ignores the code, and it goes after the if clause where there are the rest of the unlocking conditions, because you actually want to unlock the output to spend it. So there are the unlocking conditions followed. And that's how inscriptions work. Are there any questions before we continue? Yes.
Why are they not compressed?
Sorry?
Why do they not use compression?
They could.
Repeat the question.
So the question was, why didn't they compress the data? And the answer is they could compress the data. They could do whatever they liked in this amount of space. And so you store hexadecimal, so effectively bytes. So it could be anything you want. They could compress the data. They could, and they could do it. And maybe some other protocols does it. So inscriptions are there now, and they cannot really be undone. Okay, this is an example, block 774628, that is 3.96 megabytes big. And remember, I told you that effectively, if everything was said with the amount of, so the block size would be 2.8 megabytes or something. Well, that was before inscriptions and stuff, right? Because now we are actually using the, so this is a single transaction. So actually there are about 20, 30 transactions, but they're so tiny in orange color that you don't see them. Do you see them? There are some orange boxes there, and the huge blue box there is one transaction. So one transaction is about 3.85, 3.90 megabytes, and the rest are 10, 20 transactions that are tiny, normal transactions. So what, obviously, a miner includes this transaction because it's larger than 400 kilobytes. And back then, that was a year ago, there were several blocks that were more than 3 megabytes of size. So there are several disadvantages on that, obviously, but taking the space from other transactions is not really one of them. And it is one of them. If, in this case, it's definitely a problem because the whole block is a huge inscription. But typically, because the theoretical maximum of every single transaction being used, being segued, is 2.8, we would never use the rest. So indirectly, they found a way to use block space that would never be used. This is not necessarily always the case. There is this case and several other cases where they take space from typical normal transactions. I'm not trying to make any excuses for them. I just want you to have all the data. I think it's slow.
No, it's for those guys.
Okay, so so the following slide has several snapshots of blocks from Block Explorer from nowadays. So the screenshot has, when I was updating the slides, I went to the Block Explorer and got the size of all the last 15 blocks, and it was from 1.5. It was from 1.5, 1.6 to 2 megabytes, less than 2 megabytes. And this is the case in most blocks nowadays. Right? You will rarely see a block more than 3 megabytes of size. And this was the size of the blocks pre-taproot. Right? Not always, So I'm not saying that it hasn't really influenced the block size, but nowadays it's not really significant. Of course, if a new fancy NFT meme coin goes into ordinals, you have spikes, and that will become 3 megabytes again, and so on. But that's going to happen for a couple of hours, and then will subside to these levels again. And we can see the spikes when projects were being launched using ordinals. Okay, so some discussion around what this means for us and for the protocol. There was a lot of pushback from the community. Right? They didn't like that. And for good reason. So the counter argument that the block space should be only for transactions, and introducing inscription storing data this big takes up space from normal transaction, and that's bad for the network because it's supposed to be a settlement layer, a payments network, and so on. So one of the suggestions was to filter or censor, depending on how you want to call it, these ordinals, because again you can easily identify them. But we already know that that didn't really work, did it, for counterparty? That the same thing would happen now. They would just change the way that they were storing the data, and they could still do it. So is there a way to actually revert what happened to Bitcoin? Stop storing so much data into the Bitcoin, stop inscriptions? I personally think it's no. Now it's pretty much done, and it's more or less set in stone. I don't think we can do anything about it. So what some miners do, actually, one miner I know of doing it, the one being behind the filtering stuff, is that they can filter the transactions, and he's still filtering transactions of inscriptions, right, of ordinals. But because not everybody filters them, ordinal transactions go through from the other miner. So it doesn't really influence a lot the inscriptions. It's a bit inconvenient. So unless, because sometimes they have to wait for more than one block for their inscription to be included. So the other question is there to initiate discussion, maybe after we finish the presentation. Should we actually try to censor this transaction, even if we could? And who will decide if we have to censor them, to filter them? Maybe there are good arguments, and maybe we can make a documentation of what is censorable and non-censorable transaction. But this is a road that is very tricky, and I don't think we would like to go there, but that's my personal opinion. But still, still there are some issues. So there are two ways that it's bloating the network. One is that it increases the block size. And so the initial blockchain download for a new client which joins the network for a new node is much bigger because now you have a lot more data to download. It doesn't blow the UTXO, okay, but you need more data space, hard disk in your machine to store the data. And this is cumulative, so maybe it's trivial now, but it will be, accumulate a significant amount in the future. The other aspect is processing this unlocking script. So that would also take time, and that would be processing time. But that it's not really an issue even in the initial block download, because the unlocking scripts are not validated after a checkpoint forward. Every time a new release coming out of the Bitcoin node, a new checkpoint is typically placed there. And there are good reasons for that, and it makes sense if you want to discuss it later on. It's nothing to do with security concern. It's 99.9% secure to not validate transactions from a point in the past. But you can disable that, and you can validate everything as well if you want. It would also be, we still download these extra inscriptions and huge blobs of data, but it would be pretty easy to stop downloading as well. of course, you can still prune the data, but you can also not download the data, the unlocking scripts anyway, because you don't validate them. You can still do it. You could still, but there are no plans for this.
There is a pull request.
Yeah, because there was a discussion. There was a pull request, but I don't think I don't know if it's being worked on. Okay, yeah, it kind of died. Yeah, it kind of died. So again, some more discussion before we finish. So are inscription equivalent to NFT for other platforms? No, they're not really, because they're not as programmable. But they could do tricks around with other systems now. Maybe they can do some tricks, but it's not really equivalent to NFT from other platforms. Not that we care really, but I'm just I'm getting this a lot. That's why I'm clarifying it. Is the hype over? The inscription hype over? I think the hype is over, to be honest. Again, there are some spikes, but more or less it's over. At least from the activity in the blockchain, from what I can see, I don't see anything to be concerned with personally. Will inscription be here in 5 years? Yes. They'll actually be here forever. Somebody can want to store something, they will store it, and then you will have a spike in the in the blockchain. And we just have to live with that because I don't see a way to go back to how we were. Okay, this is my last slide. So nothing new happened with inscriptions. It's just the level of block size increase was a bit bigger. And I would argue that it's not as bad as storing the KPK data in UTXO, in fake addresses or multi-sig. There are several meta protocols that in layer 2s like Lightning, like BitVM, like validity rollups that are trying to get into Bitcoin. So we kind of have to accept the fact that Bitcoin is going to be used for storing data. Some data we might feel that they are useless, like storing weird wizard images in the blockchain. Some people might not agree with rollups, for example. But the blockchain doesn't really care as long as you provide the proper transaction fee. And it's a big debate that a neutral settlement layer should have policing of what transaction is good and what is not. Although I realize why there are counter arguments on that. And personally, I have nothing to worry about. It's not a concern anymore. I had my doubts initially, but nowadays I see it as something that I can easily live with, and it's not a concern for me. But again, that's all from me, and thank you. But it's up to debate, and if you want to debate it now or later on, let me know. So thank you very much. So just to add here that because you cannot see the slides, I'm working on an open source Bitcoin library. You can, I'd be happy if you could use it. The goal is educational, so it's pretty easy to actually read the code and use the library. And there are tons of examples of how to do stuff. So please, if you have time and you're a developer and you're interested in that, take a look at it, and I would love your feedback. And also based on material that I have done throughout my seminars and lectures in the past, I have compiled them into a textbook, a Bitcoin programming textbook that might also interest some of you.
Interesting. Very informative. It's a touchy topic, obviously, or not, and whatnot, but it's interesting from a computer science point of view, obviously, and for the permissionless aspect of the protocol, right? Okay. Any questions you want to ask, Kostas?
What about rules? The new protocol that's coming.
I didn't look into it. So the thing is that if it's storing a lot of data, it could be using inscription, a similar method. If it fits in an op return, there is no reason discussing it at all. If it's using inscription, this way of storing data, the same things apply that we talked about before, if you ask me. I don't know the protocol, and again, the rules are exactly the same that we discussed today. So regardless of the protocol, the rules are the same, the bloating is the same, the issues are the same, so it doesn't make any difference. And you will see tons of new protocols that are using that in the future as well. So, one of my past projects was storing hashes of data into the blockchain, right? University diplomas being stored in a hash in blockchain. So that,
which is a logical way of storing data.
Yeah,
right?
so
Just a hash.
yeah. So I actually implemented the meta protocol myself to do that. I just made sure that everything fits in 80 bytes. Right? I didn't have a choice back then. Nowadays it would be trivial to store the whole diploma online. Right? Trivial. If you were willing to pay $10 for that. Right? Any other questions?
Who here has done an inscription for educational purposes? I had to pay 40 euros in sats, you know, just to demonstrate it.
Well, I haven't done one using the ordinal protocols, but I have created inscription programmatically. No, I have made inscription programmatically to see that it works. Just test it.
Okay, thank you, Costa.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll move on to the next speaker, who will probably come down pretty soon. This guy, Philippos Ginosatis, he has a very, you could say, old person way of looking at things and market cycles. And when you talk to him, you think you will see like an old person, a wizened person, and oh, he has, you know, he's been through so much stuff, and he tells you, oh, be careful, don't believe the hype or whatever. But it's like this young guy over here. He's writing this paper. He's sharing some copies right now, so that you can have some data at hand. You can share. There are like 20 copies, I think. Yeah. And Andrea, can you find the slides? Yeah. While we share them. So that we're done with one thing. And yeah, that's the interesting thing. He's going to talk to us about market cycles, the way I understood it. He's going to tell us about market cycles and how they sync up with the Bitcoin cycle, the 4-year cycle, and how that might affect your business decisions. If you want to run a business, like half of us are a businessman here, and how that might affect some business decisions, when to expand, when to you know, stop spending, stop wasting efforts, and stuff like that. Okay, so it's such a bearish outcome. Like he's talking about a recession. We're in the beginning of a bull market, but this guy knows. He's saying no, it's gonna be a recession in 1 year. Okay, come on, Felipe. Yeah, we have the slides with the other one, the video. Okay, put up that. Do you need that now? On the extender. On the extender, there's another video. Okay. Nice. Come on, man. Floor is yours.
This is my first time. How do I? The next slide.
Yeah. When you press the screen. Move it. Yeah, it's working. Great. All yours.
Hello. Thank you for coming here, and it's time for the bad news. I'm not a technical guy. I have absolutely no idea what anyone before me was talking about, to be honest. I bother with much simpler stuff because somebody has to do that. And the theory goes like this. Since the world economy is man-made, it by definition cannot be chaotic, since chaos is a phenomenon found only in nature. Not even computers can generate chaos. So when something is not chaotic, patterns can be formed, and those patterns can be visible if one pays close attention. Since we created the economy we all live in today, there must be a mechanism that is used to make sure that this invention of ours does not get out of control. That mechanism is known, I'm not making this up, this is actually official, it's known as business cycles or market cycles, and they are 100% real. We have been experiencing them for hundreds of years now, and no matter how much we might all want to believe that this time or any time is different, fortunately or unfortunately, it is not different. After all, they say that history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes, which makes sense. We will begin by defining what a business cycle is and the distinguishable phases we can break it into to help ourselves navigate through the markets during each of those phases. For our example today, we will use the United States economy because it makes up around 25% of the global GDP. So one can safely assume, I think, that if something bad happens to this economy, the rest of the world will probably follow. After all, there's a saying that goes like this. When the US sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. Apparently right now, the rest of the world has already caught a cold. US probably has not yet sneezed, but it will. It is accurate and helpful and very simple to imagine the business cycle as a sine wave, a function that fluctuates between the highest and lowest point while moving along the x-axis, which is time. Here, I hope you all can see, are the two main phases of the business cycle, the expansion and contraction. This sine wave represents the whole economic cycle. But because the economy is complicated and multifaceted, this sine wave cannot compose of one thing, of one metric. Instead, it consists of 7 different metrics, which are measured by different government departments, at least in the United States. These metrics are real personal consumption, real personal income, real manufacturing and trade sales, non-farm payrolls employment, the employment level, industrial production. These are updated every month. And the one that is updated every quarter is the average of real GDP and real GDI. Real meaning, of course, adjusted for inflation. Do we all agree that a mathematically correct and sane combination of those metrics can actually describe the overall health of a given economy? If one disagrees, please raise your hand and tell me why you disagree. No one? That's great, because you wouldn't be disagreeing with me, you would be disagreeing with the National Bureau of Economic Research, because this is actually the 7 metrics that they use to officially track and date the business cycle for many years now. So basically, the National Bureau of Economic Research tracks income, consumption, production, and employment, which makes a lot of sense. Employment and consumption are given double weights by the NBR, which also makes sense. If we combine those metrics and remove the noise, we do actually get a function that looks very much like this. We will call it Aggregate Coincidence Index, or ACI, because life is short. But they call it coincident because it coincides with peaks and bottoms in the overall market. The name that the Federal Reserve likes to use is Coincident Economic Activity Index. You can find this online on the Federal Reserve of St. Louis's website with historical data dating back around 100 years. This sine wave will be broken down into 6 different stages, phases, whatever you like to call it. The first 4 stages will be defined by us drawing a trend line. This is a 0% trend line. The percentage represents the rate of change of the overall economy, not growth, the rate of change, the acceleration. Our trend line will be drawn parallel to the 0% at 2%. This is for many reasons. Because this is the target the United States has as an average growth rate, which is very convenient because this is what they have managed to actually achieve over the past 100 years. They have an average growth rate of 2%, which makes sense because they also have an inflation year-over-year target range of 2%. Therefore, their target, I think, is to inflict as little damage as possible to US citizens by the inflating prices. When we draw the 2% trend line, we get this. We get this. Now, the ACI has 4 clearly distinguishable phases. We lack 2 more phases, which will come by us making some marks on the pivot points, the absolute maximum and the absolute minimum of the sine wave on the peak and the bottom, which is like this. As we can now see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stages. Like I said, I'm not making this up. This is actually official. We will name each of those phases and see what happens. It is really very simple. These are the names. The first one is called recovery. At this point, the economy is expanding, but it is expanding at a below trend growth rate. The growth rate has an upward momentum, as we can see. It is below 2%, so it is below trend pace, but there is an expansion phase. Once we cross that 2% trend line to the upside, we enter the acceleration phase of the economy. This is when things really go well. We are expanding at an above trend pace. The momentum is upward. At some point, we will reach the pivot point in growth rates, whatever that might be, 3, 4, 5, 6%. It's not realistic, but in COVID, after we printed so much money, this was around 9% for the first time in history. The second highest peak over here in history was around 4.5%, just to give you a sort of perception of what we did and why this will not end well. After the growth of the rate of change of growth peaks, we enter the maturity phase, where the economy is still expanding, but the momentum has not changed. Day by day, the rate of change of growth is declining. We are expanding, but slower. Right now, as you'll see later, we are at this phase. We have peaked in the rate of change of growth. We are in the maturity phase. Therefore, as many expect that Bitcoin might go to 200,000 in 2024, I hope it does. I hope it does go to 100, but if it was to go that high, I think it would have probably already done that, because now the rate of change is slowing down. There is statistically more unlikely to be parabolic rallies. The ETF is good, yes, it's very nice. The halving is very nice, but they are not at all decoupled from the macro. Macro is always there, it will always be there, and I think that ETFs and halving and all that is sort of a retail hype. Not that I do not love Bitcoin, I really do, and I'm trying to own only Bitcoin in the future, not a single euro, but the fundamentals do play a role, and I really have no idea about them. And until now I didn't need to know because apparently there are people like you that I can ask. So, closing this parenthesis, right now we are in the maturity phase. We will see later why we are. So, the downward momentum continues, but we are expanding. At some point, the rate of change of growth will go to 2% and up lower. At that point, we are still expanding. It's an expansion phase, but the momentum is really working against the expansion. We're expanding slower and slower and slower. Once the slowdown phase is over, at some point, we reach the 0% trend line, and the momentum is downward. At this point, this is what is called a recession. A recession is not anything bad at all. It is something that we created in a cyclical way, and it is absolutely necessary for a healthy progression of any economy through time. It's part of the overall balance. Without that, it simply makes no sense, and I think all of you can understand that. Many recessions are actually very bad. Always people get hurt. Recessions are very good at cleaning up companies that are pretty much useless. I think this is the main reason they are created for, recessions anyways, to punish the zombie companies that abused cheap money, which is what many companies did during COVID and the years afterwards. Also, a small parenthesis, the interest rate, which is now 5.5%, and everyone thinks it's high. It is not high at all. It is high relatively to the past 10 years, which was basically zero, which has never happened again in history. And if you went back, not many years back, 5.5 to 6% of interest rates, short-term interest rates, is actually exactly at the average. But we have forgotten of that, and everyone was addicted to cheap money, actually free money, because 0.2% or 0% makes no sense at all. We managed to pull it off for 10 years, 15 years. It resulted in the longest bull market in the history, and also the strongest one, insane returns. Everyone could make money. I'm glad for this, but many people don't realize that they just got lucky and they think they know what they're doing, and they might try and take many other people to their side, leading to some unwanted outcomes. It is very important to understand that sometimes markets and some assets like Bitcoin are forgiven. Bitcoin is a monotonically increasing function by definition. Therefore, it does actually forgive a lot of mistakes, especially if you were in early. Once we enter the recession phase, eventually things at some point will bottom out. This is the most important transition in the cycle, and this is what I have my eyes on every time, because during the recession phase, all asset classes, except gold, post the worst performance, but they also post the best performance on the rebound, as you can also see by the transition that is steeper than anywhere else. This happens absolutely every single time. I invite you all to go as many years back as you like, no matter the monetary policy, no matter if you had the gold standard, no matter if you had a war or a pandemic, it is always the same. The system is genius, and this is why it has kept a whole world from not completely falling apart. It's not easy to make this, but they actually did it. And if we actually understand that this is how it all works, we can really make some pretty good calls for us and our people. Here is a brief explanation of what each phase is, but I will just read it, even though you can understand it. We're all very smart here. Recovery, this is the phase of the business cycle, the first one also, where aggregate or ACI has a growth rate that is improving. It is above the 0% trend line, but below the 2% trend line. The economy is expanding in this phase, but it is growing at a below trend pace. Acceleration. As growth continues to spiral upwards, the economy moves from recovery to acceleration. This is the phase where the economy is really starting to boom, The growth rate is above 2% trend line, so the economy is very strong at this point. Maturity. This is where we are right now. All good things come to an end at some point. Once the period of acceleration crosses the first inflection point, the absolute maximum, the momentum naturally changes. The economy is still growing at an above trend pace, but we transition from upward momentum in growth to downward momentum in growth, like we said. Even though the level of growth is still quite good, this inflection point is absolutely critical for various assets like stocks, crypto, and even real estate. In this specific time, it is also important for real estate. Real estate also has a cycle, which is not standard, but it's about to close very soon. I think you all know that many people cannot pay their rent. This is how it goes every time before they reset. Rents are insane. In the United States, the percentage of the salary that goes for food and housing is the highest it has been, even higher than 1927 and 28 before the 1929 depression. Much, much higher than 2006, 2007, 1999, and before COVID. Not even close, actually. After maturity, we enter the slowdown. Eventually, the economy slips below trend growth. Now the economy is still growing, but the momentum is working against the economy, and things are really starting to slow down. This is the pre-recessionary phase. Recession, like we said, after the slowdown, the economy slips into recession, which, as was shown above, it is defined by the ACI contracting or showing negative economic growth. As the recession picks up intensity, eventually things bottom out and the momentum changes once again. This is the most important transition, blah, blah, blah. After recession, we have the rebound. We said what the rebound is. Money printing, basically. The economy is still technically in a recession because growth is negative, but we transition from negative growth with downward momentum to negative growth with upward momentum. The reason this transition is so important, like we said, is because most assets perform the worst during the recession and the best during the rebound. If one is a trader or a macro trader, like a trader with 4 years, this is basically what you are looking for. This is what I do. Once the rebound phase is over and growth reaches once again the 0% trend line, the cycle starts all over again, and this represents the complete trip to the 6 stages of the business cycle. These are not made up by me. This is the ACI. You can go and find this chart from 2006 to 2011. Obviously, this represents the recession. This is 2008. At that point, the ACI was at around 1.91%. At this time exactly, the National Bureau of Economic Research declared this situation a recession. It didn't even have to go below 0%. And this actually happens almost every time. They tend to declare the recession when we enter the slowdown. As we see, when we enter the recession, everything contracts pretty quickly. Money is drained out to have the reset. Always, during the recession is where things bottom out. At this point, from 1971 and onwards, the government steps in and simply prints money to bail everyone out. This is a rebound phase. You can see that the gains are unrealistic, but they are actually realistic because you can print money. This actually, right now is 2024. It is a presidential election year in the United States. So, for the sake of the argument, we will only take a look at previous presidential election years, the ACI performance during those years, and the recessions, which, coincidentally, all 5 past, maybe, I don't know, 10 past recessions, all occurred during the election year. And I don't know why everyone thinks or has in its mind that things don't go south during an election year. This is completely false. The simple argument is that they go south, but after the elections, because people need to be euphoric to go and vote. But afterwards, every time, it happens. In the little books, I also have the exact dates of how many months before or after the recession occurred, after the elections. The blue line represents the ACI. This is from the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. They call it Constant Economic Activity Index. It is exactly the same as our ACI. Our blue line is left, from the left. Our green line is the leading economic indicators, official things, also left. The red line is a GDP-based recession indicator. We take the measures from the right side. Where's the? Where isn't it showing the recession area? Okay. I think you all have it in front of you, and you can see the gray area, which is March of 2021, around here. At this time, by the time the recession occurred, the leading indicators were already negative for quite some time. The GDP-based recession indicator, I think it was indicating a 44% of a recession occurring. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have the numbers. The ACI was, I think, at exactly 2%. So this was by definition the inflection point between maturity and slowdown. The second we entered the slowdown phase, maybe a couple of days afterwards or before, the National Bureau of Economic Research officially called this situation a recession. However, the markets had already been on a downtrend for quite some time, and this is normally how a recession works. 2001, it was the election year of George Bush, the dot-com bubble. The next recession was 2008, which was the election year of Barack Obama, the GFC. Once again, you can very well see that it is completely just a sine wave, so is the LEI. In this recession, I don't know why in the screen it doesn't show the gray area, to be honest, but if I remember correctly, the National Bureau of Economic Research in 2008 officially dated the recession when the ACI was at 1.91%. So it was technically at the slowdown phase, just below 2%. At this point, however, the GDP-based recession indicator was showing just a 13% chance of a recession occurring. The leading indicators were again negative way before the ACI. You can read how many months before the elections or after it was. I really don't recall, and it really doesn't matter. So, the next one, 2019-2020, election year of Joe Biden, 2020, this is when the recession happened. And many can argue that COVID caused the recession. This is not true at all. Every recession is bound to happen. It only needs a catalyst. COVID was just the catalyst. And why is that? 3 or 4 months before the recession, let's say December 2019, the ACI was pretty flat at 3.3%. It would naturally start to head lower if you see the rest of the graph. It is actually very flat, and it doesn't really matter. The LEI was negative, and 4 months before the recession, the GDP-based recession indicator was showing a 95% chance of recession occurring, which is the highest in the history of the series. Because many people won't be satisfied with this argument, I have one more later to justify that COVID was simply the catalyst. 2008 had another catalyst, mortgage-backed securities, and the housing market, but basically it was mortgage-backed securities. In 2020, in 2001, it was simply an insanely overpriced tech stock marketplace, with PE ratios at 3 digits, like 100 plus, which is, you can understand. So all it takes is a catalyst. When this is broken, just needs a push. It will come. Will be an oil shock. Will be a geopolitical conflict? Probably not, because there are always geopolitical conflicts. Will it be an oil shock? Probably not. Could, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Could it be commercial real estate? Most likely. And why would that be? Because after COVID, everyone started working from home. Is anyone over here who would rather work from home, or would you rather drive to work and work there? Everyone would like to work from home, but they just needed to know how it is. Now that they saw how it is, no one would like to go back. Neither would the employers, because they now need to rent way less office space. The employees do not need to pay for gas and don't waste their time. Commercial real estate will collapse, naturally. The prices will fall. Small banks, because they are small, are very heavily invested in commercial real estate. Actually, around 30 to 35% of the loans of the small commercial banks is on commercial real estate. For example, JP Morgan has around 6% of the loans in commercial real estate, probably because they're not fucking stupid. Bank failures will play a role in the crash, will be a catalyst. Yes, it will. Is it connected with commercial real estate collapse? Of course it is. This is exactly what happened in 2008, but in residential housing.
Give us some conclusions of those graphs in the
Come on.
article. Give us some conclusions.
This is today. I won't take long. This is today. At the time of the screenshot, the ACI was 3.85%. I remember seeing it a month ago, it was 4.14. Right here it was on 4.7. The downtrend is crystal clear. The leading economic indicators are negative for a long time. The GDP-based recession indicator indicates a minus 7.4% chance of recession, but it is almost vertically going upwards. And also, they have not updated it since July of 2023, which is pretty suspicious. I do not really know why. You see any similarities with previous events? Yes, of course you do. This is what the ACI could and probably will look like in the following months. This is us entering the slowdown phase. We already have our negative momentum. We're at 3.85. Give it some time. It will eventually go below 2%. We saw what happens when we go below 2%. Now, enough with the ACI. Let's get to the interesting part and the better one. Okay, according to the ACI, we could very well see that everything is a cycle and we are heading toward similar events that happened in the past. Pleasant or unpleasant, for me it's pleasant. But this is the only thing that actually no one can argue because it is 100% flawless through all years until from when it was invented. This represents the rates that yields the treasuries actually give you back from the 3-month bill all the way to the 30-year treasury. Over here, we're missing a dot. I don't really know why, but this is a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4, 5, 6, 1 year, 2, 3. Right? It's this is the 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, 7 years, 5 years, 3 years, 2, 1, 6, 3, 1 month. Basically, why this is so important is because this is how banks make money. Banks borrow from the Federal Reserve. Over here, they borrow short term and they lend it to their customers long term. This minus this is the profit they make. Everyone uses the 10-year and the 3-month. Why not? So if we here take the 10-year minus the 3-month, we would see that the banks will actually be making around 2% of profit on each loan. This yield curve is from 2010. This is a healthy yield curve. This is the yield curve right now. Federal Reserve has raised short-term interest rates. They're over here. This is the 10-year. This is from 2 or 3 months back. If we apply the same principle and we take the 10-year minus the 3-month to see how much profit banks are making, we would get a negative 1.2%. This is a historically large loss. This has preceded each recession since the 1950s with zero false signals. If we take this and put it on a graph, which is the 10-year minus the 3-month, we can see that when it inverts, upon every uninversion, a recession occurs. Why it occurs upon the uninversion? Because banks are again making a profit, so they will not completely collapse in a recession situation. Is it all fixed? Yes, of course it is. As we can see, we are very, very, very low. In fact, not even close to 2008, not even close to 2000. And as you can see, in 2019, the yield curve was inverted. Banks were losing money. This is what caused the recession, not COVID. It would come. COVID was the catalyst. If we wanted to see such a big loss in banks, we need to go all the way back to the 1980s. Also, there is a 100%, I have plotted this at home, positive correlation between how long the yield curve stays inverted and how deep the recession is. In 1929, it stayed inverted. It does not matter how inverted it is. It only matters for how long. In 1927 through 1928 and 29, it stayed inverted for 638 days. This is the longest in history it has ever remained inverted. It was also the deepest recession ever, with the S&P declining around 90%. The second one was 2008, with 530 days of an inverted yield curve and a stock market declining of about 65%. Right now we are at 550 days, which is 20 days more than before 2008. Anyone would agree that, statistically speaking, there is no way there will not be a major economic downturn. It has always happened in history, and in fact, even here, which is like for 100 days, and it was from 0.0 something percent, a recession occurred, but it was only a 20% drawdown. In COVID, because it was a very short-term inversion, the drawdown in the S&P was 35%. At the same time, on Bitcoin, it was 65%. Given this situation, and this, which is the second longest, but now we are on the second longest, now this is the third, here we declined by 65, the S&P. Now, the S&P, let's say, could decline by 70% realistically. Why would Bitcoin not decline by 90%? Anyone would agree? Why? Could it be possible, statistically speaking, that given all these historical events, Bitcoin is not decoupled neither from macro, neither from the stock market yet? If the S&P goes down by 65 or 70%, Bitcoin could very well go down 90, and this probably will happen. Yes, I don't know when. You probably do not care because you're holders. I'm just saying.
Can we get some questions?
Yes, who wants to ask a question? Are you bored?
Does anyone have any? Because you're reinforcing the argument. I believe you. Okay, the data is there. I want the conclusion.
You gave up.
I'm not
lost.
asking against you.
No, I'm just kidding. I know you have.
You want to ask something?
Just two more slides.
Yeah. Now or at the end?
Okay,
Just two more slides. Please.
Yeah, I have two questions. And this model, who, in the case of a recession, who will lend money to the government in the current situation?
No, they'll print.
And second question is, what narrative will the government use to avoid civil unrest?
Couldn't know that.
You say they will print, so that means that then the recession is over.
The recession will be over because they will print.
So
probably they're delaying the recession because they're really trying to get inflation back down, because you cannot print when it's so high right now, the inflation. We also have the elections. They say inflation is 3.5, it could very well be 13.5.
but then it will be like a very short recession?
I don't know.
Yeah, of course, when
The
nobody
duration,
knows,
I cannot know the duration, but it will definitely be a deep one, according to historic data.
I always hear these two contradicting the narratives, and I think both are correct. Like recession is coming, be careful. And then the other narrative is that there is like, I don't know in English, like fiscal dominion, like right now. So the government needs money, so they will just have to print, so then there cannot be recession. That is like the opposite narrative.
Every time they print during the recession, because recession is what takes inflation rapidly back down. They need this event to happen, so they are allowed to print. If they print right now, we are all fucked completely. It will be like 1970s, the hyperinflation decade, where they.
What do you recommend? What do you recommend? What do you recommend?
I don't know. You hold. I'm just all liquid right now for 2 years, and I'm waiting for Armageddon to re-enter the market. Which is a very simple strategy. A holder does not really care.
I know that the last 2 years that we are gas, the stock market and the petroleum, they went up as trade.
Yes, of course. I didn't say that my plan is perfect. It works for me. I know I lost on gains. Of course, I'm getting an insane interest on the dollar, but I know that I'm playing it safe. I'm patient, and I won't deviate from my path because this is what I do good. I can never be accurate on anything. What I do is very easy. This is the probability of recession 12 months ahead of term spread readings. Not even close to 2008, not even close to 2000, not even close to COVID. Again, we will go back all the way to 1980 to see a similar probability of a recession happening. This is very high. Also, this is the Federal Reserve's version. This is my last slide. Bear with me. I know it's very unpleasant, but this is the Federal Reserve Board of Governors version of the yield curve. It is the 3-month bill, 18 months from now, price minus the 3-month right now. I do not really know, and I do not really care why it is so accurate, but it is. If we look at the 90-day moving average, it has never given a false signal. And again, to see that deep of an inversion, and for so long, we will need to go back to the 1980s. It was deeper, but it was not that prolonged. This is where we are right now. This was COVID. This was 2008 financial crisis. This was the dot-com crash. That is it. And if you have 3 more minutes, I have a recording. May I play it? The recording is from an interview from a senior analyst named Christopher Neely. He's from the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. The interview is from September 7th of 2023. It will be 3 minutes long, and I think it is quite interesting. Yes, it's a VLC. Oh, yeah, you don't have VLC.
I follow some economists in the New York Fed and use the spread between the 10-year yield and the 3-month Treasury yield. If one looks at a graph of the 10-year yield minus the 3-month yield, that is the 10-year 3-month yield spread, one sees that this spread is almost always positive. That is, long rates are almost always higher than short rates. But when the slope of the yield curve declines, that is, when the 3-month interest rate rises relative to the 10-year yield, or equivalently, the 10-year 3-month yield spread declines, a recession becomes statistically more likely. A negative spread, that is an inverted yield curve, has preceded each recession since the 1950s. Statistical models that allow the spread to predict recessions in a formal way show that the spread does predict recessions well, in the sense that implied recession probabilities rise before each recession. The model isn't perfect, however. There have been false positives. For example, there were high probabilities of recession when no recession occurred in the late 1960s and late 1990s. But the nominal yield spread is currently quite low and predicts a 65% probability of recession in the next 12 months. And this recession probability would be unprecedentedly high for a false positive. The near-term forward spread from the Board of Governors currently estimates about a 50% chance of recession in 12 months.
You know, let me ask you this. So you mentioned 2 kind of false positives. So is there any reason to doubt the current predictions of the yield spread? So I think we've all heard or headlines that a recession is coming, you know, quote unquote, in the next 6 months, but it also hasn't happened yet. So could it be wrong that it's not predicting that?
So yeah, there actually is reason to doubt that the nominal yield spread has its usual predictive power right now. So the normal practice has been to examine nominal spreads, but there are also good arguments for looking at real, that is inflation adjusted spreads. In particular, real interest rates should be more closely related than nominal rates, both to the stance of monetary policy and to expected future growth. So if one does this and one corrects the 10-year 3-month spread for expected inflation at those horizons, using inflation expectations from survey measures, the real interest rate spread also implies an elevated but lower probability of recession in 12 months. That is, it implies a probability of recession of about 40%.
Okay, so lower.
So I should note that this 40% probability is the highest probability in the history of the series, however, exceeding that even given in an actual recession.
Thank you very much for your precious time.
Congrats on this. I feel like I met the Greek Michael Perry. Like, yeah, that's exactly what I felt. My argument wasn't about the graphs. Like, I'm telling you, no, I believe your argument. I believe you've convinced me. Like, tell me the results. What your information is extracted from that data. And you say that we're in the beginning of a big recession. Okay, absolute bearish, like 90% down.
I would say realistic.
Okay. We should have to short everything, a big short.
No, I'm not gonna short. Just wait.
Just hold. Just hold and no leverage.
No.
So pretty much everything is okay.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Nice. It's good to be realistic, okay? We're high in the clouds, like, whoa, we'll never go up and stuff like that, right? But it's good to have the actual data that is showing the market manipulation by the central banks and all these things, and to actually have a realistic view. So coming up, we have Mir, right? Mir, she is one of my favorite people in Bitcoin. I'm not kidding. Yeah, really. I really like the way she thinks. Everything is so nice. Like, we're both polymaths. So that's how I resonated with her way of thinking. As soon as I saw her talk in Riga, I was like, okay, this is me. Okay, this is how I think. This is how I work. So she's gonna tell us about why learning Bitcoin is so difficult. And in case you don't know who Mir is, like, I could summarize it from a tweet that I saw because I think I loved it. She's the godmother of Italian meetups, basically, of Bitcoin meetups in Italy. Okay, because she has made so many of them happen. And okay, among so many other things that you've done, this is like one of the most impactful, I believe, because she showed me the map of Satoshi spritzes, and it's dominating. It's all around Italy. It's crazy, and Italy is a big country, so that's very exciting. Okay, what do you need? You need the slides?
I have the slide here.
The clicker, yeah, our Michael Berry has the clicker. Okay, I know. Yeah.
In time of recession, we want to keep advantage of that. So I guess it's like this. Yeah, amazing. And yes, I have to say that Satoshi Spritz is not my it's not my phone, not something that I'm doing now. And but I love that definition. I'm coming back to the definition here because the first slide is about me. And I always say that the first slide introducing me is the most difficult one because I don't have a clear role. I never had one. In my life, I have done so many different things. I've changed my path so many times. And so I have to come back when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be two things. And one was to be a hacker. The other one was to be a pop star. And in a way, life make me kind of closer to both, but in a very mysterious way. And so, for example, I started my university doing communication, but I wanted to do computer science, and people told me a woman is not supposed to do something like that. So I focused on communication. I liked it, but then I thought, okay, music is my stuff, and I put everything into music. I even started a PhD in musicology, and so then Bitcoin arrived and changed everything. It was my occasion to change once again. And while I was doing my PhD, but also I was working as a vocal coach. And yes, done so many different things. I like the definition of godmother of the Italian community. And yeah, the journalist like you and made an article about me, and she decided to do that like that, to call me like that. And I think it's a very good definition because it's also about the fact that I'm very Italian and godmother really resonates with me. So during those years, what I have done for Bitcoin is basically helping the builders, helping the community, always been around, trying to do my best, and with not a specific role, but using all of my energy, and I still do that. I am also a mother, so right now it's more difficult than in the past to be focused only on Bitcoin. And for the future, well, I have some plan that I can tell yet, but I'm focusing more on Bitcoin, but also on other freedom techs, and hopefully in some month, probably for the first time in years, I'm going to have a more strict and definite role. But let's talk about the topic. Why understanding Bitcoin is so hard? I have 3 reasons. The first 2 actually are kind of trivial, and we are going to focus on the third one for the rest of the presentation. So let's start with the first reason. And bad news, once again. Understanding Bitcoin takes a lot of time, energy, flexibility. And this is why it's so hard, because we have to unlearn so many things. And yes, and from time to time, we have also to reason from first principle, which is very tough for our mind to accept and to do. But the good news, there is a good news. Other expert, real professional, they are not better equipped than us in understanding Bitcoin, and it really shows most of the time. And so this is what happened when we start to approach Bitcoin. At the beginning, we feel that we are terrible and we know nothing, but soon we feel we are the best expert in the world. And then, yeah, recession. And we feel like, holy shit, I basically know nothing. Well, not just like the beginning, because we are slightly better. So we keep learning and learning with a different and right attitude. It's a new concept. This is the reason why it's so difficult, even after years. And those are the words from Satoshi Nakamoto. He was trying to explain Bitcoin to normies, to people. What is this Bitcoin? But writing a description for this thing for general audiences is bloody hard. There's nothing to relate to. And that's still true after so many years. It's a one-time creature. And this is very difficult for the mind to catch up, and even for Satoshi to describe it to other people, right? And so, as I was telling before, you have to unlearn, to start from tabula rasa, and to challenge all of your conviction, all of your skills before Bitcoin. Also, the other reason is just very difficult to get the signal over the noise. There are journalists and people, they have their own agenda in describing Bitcoin. So for a newbie, they just like a very messy territory to navigate in. You find so many different information and you're very, very confused. And many of these information are not only, I mean, those are plenty wrong because people want to manipulate what you're learning about Bitcoin, right? And also there is this giant problem of speculation, the word of speculation. They are not only people who have their own agenda, but they are trying to scam you into buying their tokens, shit coins, or new project, blockchain, ICO, whatever. And so you have to be really careful to navigate, not and try not to get into this territory. But those 2 reasons are easy to understand. The third one, actually, I think it's going to take a little bit more time. And the reason is that Bitcoin, in Bitcoin, there are a lot of different disciplines that are involved. This is the definition of our dear Gigi. Bitcoin spans a lot of topics. Even if you want to get a rudimentary understanding of it, curiously, the deeper you dig, the more disciplines will pop up. Basically, Bitcoin is really, really a strongly multidisciplinary. And I have spent the last 4 days of my life, also studying everything about multidisciplinarity and polymathy and this topic. And at some point, something clicked on me. Why don't talk about that, not only for people who are just like that, but also for Bitcoin? And so I started from this. That was a very famous graphics about Bitcoin. I don't know if you can see that, but it was just circulating during 2016, 17, like years. And it's very nice because it shows, it's not very correct. I don't agree with everything, but doesn't matter. Because at least you have the macro area that are involved into Bitcoin, which are cryptography, politics, economics, and distributed system. Probably I will put this together just like technology, politics, and economics. But inside, you can see all the disciplines, the typical disciplines, academic disciplines that are involved. And at the center, there should be, in this case, espionage, but I think that, for example, game theory is something very close to have all these disciplines together. But we can discuss about that for hours, and I don't want to. But basically, I want to only show you so many disciplines that are involved in Bitcoin, and I think there are way more than those. So this is just like a list. And if you want to take a brief look at this, probably you will come up with others. I think it's the first we already quoted, but the last one, we have a list to talk about philosophy because there is intersection with philosophy, psychology, sociology, business theory and application, e-commerce, communication, marketing, design, accounting, tax law, and so on and so on. This is a quote from Anil. Bitcoin requires an interdisciplinary approach spanning assessing solely through a narrow sense of expertise means failing to see the wider system. This is the reason why experts of all of these disciplines are so bad at getting Bitcoin, because they don't understand the big picture, the interdependencies between all the parts. Even great technological people or people coming from finance, professor need to understand a little bit of all the other discipline. This has come from Jaco. I was doing this trilemma about the culture in Bitcoin, and I find it pretty interesting because it shows that to understand Bitcoin, you have to stay in the middle. If you are an engineer only, you're not going to understand the finance world completely, and also the part of the idealist, the people that are just looking for human rights into Bitcoin, the politics part, and all this stuff. Because you are so focused on the tech that you don't see everything else, and you can say, okay, the tech is not that cool in the end. It's just a collection. Why I should be interested in Bitcoin? It's just a collection of all the technology, and it's not that efficient, but it's missing the compromise with the other worlds, right? And same for speculator, they can say, okay, Bitcoin is cool, but it can work better, right? It can be, I can have a faster Bitcoin with technology, yes, but also, I mean, they don't care about the ideals, censorship resistant, and all of these things that make Bitcoin really not centralized, so very useful for human rights and people trying to escape a difficult situation or not being targeted for our privacy. And so it's really, really important to start, even if we feel that we are professional of one field, to stay in the middle ground and to understand everything. And so my Bitcoin learning experience has been just like in 2013, the first time that Giacomo told me about Bitcoin. I thought, Bitcoin is not for me. It's cool. I can understand something. But I was like, okay, this is your stuff. Do Bitcoin stuff. I come back later. I'm doing my PhD. And then I met the people. So for me, the entry point of Bitcoin was the people talking about the technology. So I love technology, but in the end, it was the human factor. They were discussing everything, and I was like, oh my God, this is history in the making. I want to be part of it. Let's start from now. So I quit. I left what I was doing because I felt I cannot stop thinking about Bitcoin and all the application. And I started to study Bitcoin all the time. I didn't sleep to catch up with everything. And I asked so many questions. And for me, the human factor was really important. And then technology was my occasion to come back to that computer science I really wanted to do. And then it came for me the part about finance and economics, because personally I found less interesting, but still had to study a lot and still have to. And so I felt in this rabbit hole, never recovered, really happy about that. And I feel that many of you feel the same. So how can we approach the study of Bitcoin? So I think this is really interesting. I tend to start from the big picture. In my experience, study from the very horizontal type of explanation of Bitcoin works better because you give the people a sort of a map of what's going on. And then you go into the technical and more engineering details. It doesn't scare people, but you want to say everything and to go deeper. And in my experience, I noticed two things. One is that people have very different entry points. So you probably are not going to reach the right entry point the first time that you are talking with somebody about Bitcoin, but coming back and forth, you are going to find the entry point for them, or they are going to find it there again. And the second thing that I noticed, which is really important, is that in understanding Bitcoin, in learning Bitcoin and teaching Bitcoin, you have to accept that you need to anticipate and repeat the same concept all over again, all the time. It's just how Bitcoin works. Let's see why. This is why Bitcoin is a complex and dynamic system. Follow me. What I mean, I don't know how many of you are familiar with complex system. I don't want to talk too much about that, but I think it's interesting for the comprehension of my goal. Complex is a term that comes from Latin, and it means complex, just like interweave. So in Bitcoin, there are variables, and it is important to understand that because if you change something, something else is going to be affected. So there are plenty of interdependencies into Bitcoin. So this is the reason why you have to come back and forth to understand one thing and then understand another thing, and now the things are correlated and change each other all the time. And so you have to have the mindset of a complex, you have to be more complex in your thoughts, you have to develop these and continue to do that. The typical deterministic models don't work in complex system. So giving an input, having an output doesn't work like that. It's not that it's not like that in that order. But the good news about complex systems still is they are not random, right? We are not in the realm random, but there are patterns. And so we can find the patterns, we can identify them and understand better. So as I was telling, in Bitcoin, there are interdependencies between the fields of knowledge. And it's not only that you have to master every single discipline, not too much. The master is too much. To understand a little bit of the disciplines involved in Bitcoin, you have to understand a little bit. You also have to understand that the intersection between the fields, and you also have to understand how they change each other. And also you have to do a very difficult path and journey that is coming back and forth, just like transdisciplinary problems. So you also have to master the not obvious path or interaction between fields and variables. So let's make some concrete and some practical example, because otherwise you would understand what I'm implying here. For example, the history of money depends on technology. The coinage is one good example of that. So physical technology changes the finance rules, the debasement. And so at the same time, technology, you cannot study technology by itself. Technology is influenced by monetary rules in Bitcoin. So central banks manipulate interest rates. This is why it's so important to study the history of money. Creating tech bubbles. So the tech bubbles are not only a matter of economy or only a matter of technology. You have to understand how to combine those to really get the big picture. But I have not good news about understanding Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is complex and also dynamic as a system, which means that Bitcoin changes all the time. So you get a big picture, you know there are interdependencies, which is great, but you also have to accept that Bitcoin is changing all the time. So you have to keep up, you have to be updated. And so you need to understand that there are dynamic evolving protocol rules. There are layers that are changing. When I started studying about the Bitcoin, the year 2, layer 2 wasn't even a thing, right? And maybe in the future we're going to be many layers. More than that, you have to understand there are evolving software implementation. There are evolving hardware tools, metrics that are evolving in Bitcoin, and there are political, cultural, community changes all the time. So you can't rest when you're learning about Bitcoin, sorry. And the narrative around Bitcoin change all the time. When I started, for example, there was this, I remember there was some discussion about the fact that please stay on the technology only, don't speak about all the part about human rights because it's too much, and people that will prevent people from trying Bitcoin, let's stay technical. In other time, there were just like technology is going to scare people away. So they are changing all the time. And one of the example is one of the latest debate about privacy and scarcity. Is more important than scarcity or privacy, which one is the best narrative for Bitcoin? And they are evolving, it's changing all the time. So you have to be aware also about the discussion on the community. It's important for, not for Bitcoin, but to be more aware of all the picture. So follow me on this, because I have good news in the end. If we put all of this together, we can say that Bitcoin is a polymath creature. What I mean, I don't know if you heard about the term before. This is a very nice poll by Viva, by Life with Bitcoin, and she asked, do you feel that you are a generalist or a specialist by yourself? And they kind of distributed half and half, but the majority of people that reply quoted about themselves as generalist. Who is a specialist? It's not very difficult to explain who is a specialist. Is somebody with a professional, an expert in a discipline. What really surprised me studying those topics is that discipline and specialism is something kind of recent in the history of humanity. It's been around only for 2 centuries. And so we are used to this mindset, but actually is not that common in the history of man. So the problem with discipline, they tend to originate the mass of knowledge. They are amazing. Specialism is something incredible. The only problem is that they tend to create silos. They have a lot of problems, but I think the most important one is they tend to keep people outside. If you're an outsider, you cannot participate in that because you're not an expert, right? You cannot talk about that. You're not an expert. You cannot publish something because there is a peer review system or whatever. And this is really dangerous in the long term because you tend to circulate the same amount of knowledge. You quote people that are telling so without verifying. And after some time, it's just like accepted like religion, and nobody is going to check it, because if you check, you're going to be extroverted. And so there are plenty of problems. Also, specialists tend to be very bad. I learned this with prediction. They are good with small-term prediction, but medium, long-term, they are worse than random prediction. And there are many studies about that. And so specialism is great, but is not the best. Also, generalism means having a very broad, horizontal, wide type of knowledge. You can have a lot of skills. They can usually are kind of shallow. They can be related to each other, but usually they are not. So there are plenty of terms to say that you are a generalist, but in a bad way. You are trades, or jack of all trades, master of none. But nowadays there are also good terms. There are very trendy now, just like you're a multi-passionate, which sounds way better. You're a multi-potentialite or whatever, and they works better in a way because you feel that you have some skill. You have a lot of skill actually. You can be very flexible. You are smart and fast learner, but your knowledge tend to stay on the shallow part, and also it's very difficult, trust me, to navigate a career because you don't have a real role, you don't have credential. So we really have to choose between those? Well, yes, but there is a third way, which is polymathy. Polymathy is the combination of these two words, verticality plus horizontality, which means that you can get the best from the horizontal knowledge plus some very narrow and deep knowledge in some specific fields. And this is amazing because when you study polymath, and I'm going to publish a book in, hopefully, the next year or two, you can see there are typical patterns of polymath, and they use shortcuts, they use a lot of hacks, I would call them hacks, to reach that point, because we have been taught that we can only at maximum reach a very good high level of excellence in one field. But there are people all over the history, there are plenty actually, that reached this level of excellence in many fields. So there are typical patterns and way to do that. And it's really fascinating. And so this is a list of all the people I can think, just for example, that have been polymath in the history of humanity. What can I add more for you is just that nowadays, so one thing first. The first thing is that usually many people that we think they were specialists, actually they were polymath. But we remember only for one thing. When we look at their biography, actually they were master in plenty of things. One of the exceptions is Leonardo da Vinci. Everybody knows that Leonardo da Vinci was very good at least in 13 fields, which is completely crazy. But there are other examples. One of my favorites is Goethe. Goethe was a scientist as long as a great writer, and he has done so many different things, for example. And nowadays, there are still polymaths. Polymaths are not disappeared. There is this idea that since the knowledge is too vast now, it's impossible. That's not true. Many of the polymath of nowadays are also entrepreneurs. So Elon Musk is one of the people that is considered nowadays a polymath. Also Richard Branson from Virgin. But there are other examples completely different. One that I found is Gabby Thomas, which is a runner that won 2 medals at the Olympics. She has also a master and good publication in epidemiology. And she has done another thing now that I can't remember, but it's basically excellence in 3 fields, which is crazy to think about. And so, but also, that's really interesting. We have a Bitcoiner polymath, somebody that can be immediately put on a list of a polymath is Nick Szabo. I don't know if you ever went to his website, his blog. You can see now, but the argument, the topics is so great at, they are so diverse, so crazy how much he knows in insights in all of these things. So if you have some time, go there just to see the list of the things completely not correlated to Bitcoin, completely not correlated to each other. Nick Szabo is an amazing example of polymath. So let's catch up everything that I said, because I have some sort of a good news after all this recession bad news. Why do we need to understand Bitcoin? Why we have to do all this mess and understand so many different fields? Well, I hope that we will going to reach the point where It's going to be just like the internet. We don't need to understand the internet to use it, but we are in a very special time frame. So this time frame means that understanding Bitcoin in a way is still necessary. It's a very early ecosystem. There are resource camps. So we want to understand the things by ourselves. And tomorrow probably won't be necessary just like now. And the second, that is still possible. So it's a time frame, glorious time frame to that happen only once in a lifetime. And tomorrow won't be possible. Also, we are kind of reaching that point. It's impossible to catch up with everything going on in Bitcoin, but still we can have a rough idea what's going on. And the third reason is that it's our understanding Bitcoin, learning Bitcoin is our personal excuse to become a little bit more of a polymath. We're not polymath, but we can develop some polymathic traits. And I think Bitcoin is such a great occasion to do that. If you don't believe me, there is a very good study that endorses the idea that every human brain is totally capable of polymath. But the problem is that it's our culture, it's our education that says, our conviction that we are not capable of doing that. So basically, we have a very, very strong brain to do that. And to develop that, Bitcoin is a very, very great excuse to develop that, those traits. And so for me, oh, sorry. Yeah, well, I know. I think most of the people think of Bitcoin just like an investment, monetary investment, or an investment, human investment, because I knew the best people there are now in my life. But I also think it's a personal investment in our knowledge. And that's really, really important, the most important investment we can do for ourselves. And especially now that in the future everything is going to be, we don't know what's going on. We only know that we have to adapt. We have to be very flexible, dynamic, and complex in responding to all the challenges on the future. And so learning Bitcoin is tough, but it's our occasion to improve ourselves in a way that I cannot see a comparison to. So learn Bitcoin, it's totally worth it. Thank you. So if you have any question now, in the future, whatever, you can basically find me everywhere, even on Kit now. But yes, it's impossible to find me on Kit, but trust me, I'm there. And also I put my NPub. It's impossible to write down my NPub, but you will find me eventually there on Instagram, on X, and there is also my email, so you cannot get rid of me easily. Thank you so much for your attention, especially now, and thank you, George, especially, and everybody at the organization for this amazing event. Thank you for the attention at this late hour. It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
We miss George.
Where is George? I can do George. George. Oh, great, great. Oh,
we are all George, right?
Thank you, Mir. We are all George. So, guys, after this, let's all grab a drink. No, I just want to say that let's make a Chandula tournament.
Yeah.
In like 5 minutes, you can grab a drink, and now let's all gather in the. No.
No.
So George led me in a wrong way. Sorry, guys.
Sorry, I am going to step in here, and I'm gonna say that we still have one thing that we haven't done in the schedule. So I'm sorry for taking the time, and but we're going to squeeze in a really short business talk, right? So we have a panel discussion. Mir, I need you back on stage.
Okay. It's still my
Michelle.
You
and
can
Luis.
get rid of me. I told you so.
So you're not escaping the stage.
Yeah.
And we are gonna take the chair, the stand here, sit on the stand, and we are going to talk a bit about how we do business in Bitcoin.
Not a good idea.
So we're gonna keep it only at short for 20 minutes only, maybe 16. I don't know. Is there allowed to talk about business in Bitcoin? No, we can do it. So I just want to make it more like a discussion where we all participate, because at some point we all need to make money, right? Put bread in our plates, and comes to this amazing space, like this next year, for example. So I have brought, I have like really brought like the last day these people here and asked them, do you want to participate in a panel about doing business and being profitable in Bitcoin? And they said yes. So they're here to answer your questions. A little bit about me and why I am on stage with them. I do, except that I organize the Bitcoin blockchain Athens meetup in Athens, and I run the community there together with Natalie and Andreas. I also help George with all the commercial stuff. So I help him with all brokering the commercial deals and doing stuff between euro, dollar, and Bitcoin. And it's always a big headache. Like, how do you do all this stuff? How do you do marketing, sales, business development? Which people to approach? Bitcoiners, non-Bitcoiners. How do you approach them? How do you reach out to them? And in the end, how? At the end of the day, you put the numbers down and you can take something for your family. So I guess this is what matters to all of us. And well, we've all met this guy, so I don't think you want to introduce yourselves again, maybe very shortly. Michelle?
So I'm Michel, you also know me as Keto Miner. I'm the founder of Nodo and Host for Coins. So Nodo is a company that builds and sells Bitcoin full nodes and also hosts servers with Bitcoin full nodes. And Host for Coins is an anonymous VPS, virtual private server service, which also only accepts payments in Bitcoin.
And I just want to ask, how many of you in the audience have a business and make money from running a business? Please raise hands. In general business. How many of you accept Bitcoin? How many of you accept only Bitcoin? Challenging, right? And I want to ask here from the crowd that we have on stage, how many of you had a business before Bitcoin? And now I want to focus like on the differences. Sales, business development, marketing.
Well, I come from a very traditional industry, which is oil and gas. So I used to do sourcing for government entities, call it Bosnia, Gazprom, other entities, and I used to be in sourcing of materials for exploration and production. So something very technical. I did it for about 8 years, and then I transitioned to Bitcoin. And the hardest thing for me, it was the way to approach sales, because in one it's very bureaucratic, official tenders and everything, and the other one is more like growth marketing, right? So the main to approach and get clients, you need a lot of audience online, which it was something completely new for me, because most of my clientele didn't come online, but more due to the industry. And so I had to take a lot of growth marketing courses to understand how actually, internet works, and Twitter and YouTube and all these ads. And one of the complications that now we are having is, even that we sell hardware, Google Ads doesn't allow us, and it's a little bit open, but bans a lot of campaigns. So especially when you're dealing with things like Bitcoin, sometimes they say, "Oh, you're selling investment," but it's not. It's not investment. So targeting marketing campaigns online, it's a big thing, because it can exponentially grow your business if you do a good marketing and you target it to a specific niche that you have in mind. So you have to know your user, or who's gonna be your user, your predilected user. I think it's something very important. And the other one is, especially with payments, is to have a good front end of how your point of sale or your e-commerce is waiting, and that the transaction paying with Bitcoin is not such a headache, but it's just, just scan QR codes and payment, and it's fast and easy. Maybe you can use an API, or there is already a lot of people I do now payments. Well, you can coin pay now payments. There's third parties, or you can run your own node and create a point of sale. So those were the mainly clashes between traditional and then moving to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I hear what you say about being online, having an online presence, and with George, we're always trying to be very polymaths, but let's say finding new ways of posting stuff without posting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's also especially on Bitcoin
Actually, this is one of the best engagements. So going to conferences, going to meetups, and just talk to people about your project or your idea, it will make a way greater organic growth for what you want to spread around, independently if it's a business idea or just a project.
So first, I don't know if such a concept exists, but I'm a non-professional business owner, meaning I've been running businesses for 20 years on the side of my day job, but never made enough revenue from it to live for my business. And in my fiat hosting company, it's word of mouth only. I'm a technical person. I suck at marketing and sales. My best sellers are my customers, and they bring new customers, and that's how it goes. In the Bitcoin space, it's totally different because here I have some legitimacy to actually sell what I'm selling. And yeah, people just, you do one podcast, two podcasts, four podcasts. I was actually first time invited to forced invited to a podcast during a conference to show my product. And that's how it started. And it never stopped since. It's been since 2017 that the project started, the model project started. And since 2018, we started selling. Yeah, this is how it happened. And it's, I would say, if you are a Bitcoiner, it's an easy audience to sell to because it's like-minded people. So that's really different because in a fiat business, you have to really put effort into marketing, sales. You're competing against thousands of other companies, and in the Bitcoin space, when we started, we were competing against half of a company. Now we have a few competitors, but yeah, back then it was fairly easy to get the word out.
But I guess that means also that the market is growing. So you're not applying only to people who know Bitcoin, but you're applying to people who are getting in there. So I guess the education part plays a big role, right? Maybe you want to answer this.
Yeah, so many things to say. So I don't know where to start, but yes, education in general is really important, especially if you're building a business for Bitcoiners, but not only for Bitcoiners, also for people outside. So you have to focus before on your Bitcoin business model, and there's no book that is going to teach you that, right? And if you're going to apply the typical mindset, the typical rules of business, you're going to fail. You're going to probably fail the same, even if you don't apply that. But it's yeah, it's a matter of fact. And I have seen so many different Bitcoin business failing. Myself, I had an experience in that, so I kind of failed with my company. A great idea, not great team. And so I'm talking from my experience. I think most of the time is just that you have to apply completely different and new rules, but at the same time you have to apply some good rules. And this is why I was telling before Michelle that this morning I was telling him Nodal was one of the first company. I saw their marketing. It was very early, all considering the history of Bitcoin. It was 2018, right? And I saw everything. The product was okay, absolutely based, but also their marketing was on point. It was the first time I saw something and I said, this is the way, right logo, right communication, right everything on point. And they didn't have done a specific focus on that, right? I mean, it was just you you loved your product, you thought it was a good idea with the name and with everything, but you were aligned with your product and also with the community, and also with the target, and it worked pretty well. And so the communication was good because there was some education about the importance of running a full node and having a specialized hardware from trusted party. So one of the things I found most difficult is not only having completely new role you have to navigate. It's also the fact that if you want to stay, pass me the term, a completely kosher, ethical Bitcoin business, it's hard. It's really tough to have a maximalist business into Bitcoin, but that's because of two things. One is because, I mean, how can you monetize something like a wallet if you're not going to sell the data of the user, if you're not going to put advertisement, if you're not going, how can you appeal to VC? How can you have funds? How can you, even if that haven't got found at the beginning, how can you maintain that product? And if you start doing something close the source, the community, of course, is going to react. You're going to use close the license or things like that. If you want to stay a completely trusted Bitcoin business, you're going to compromise a lot with the typical kind of moving. And that's a giant problem, because you don't want to compromise yourself, you don't want to compromise the product for your target. And so the profitable business are not that many, and you have to be very smart to find a way in make everything working. So for example, I love the idea that you can have many companies working together, and you can make recirculate the money from one to another, or use the word of mouth from one brand to another, or you create crazy cash flow. So there are plenty of creative way to make this work while staying true to your business, to your idea, to your ideals. But it's so tough, and this is the reason why, in my opinion, it's very tough to have a profitable Bitcoin business. There are, but many are failing.
I know what I observed in the Bitcoin business world, that I see many businesses with a really nice technical product, and usually people in the Bitcoin world have very strong principles, and they don't want to compromise. And this is hard because the audience and the market is really niche and small. So sometimes you will extend it to somewhere outside the niche audience. And then how do you do that? How do you educate them? Do you do extra marketing? Do you hire like rockstar salespeople? Do you compromise principles? Like, do you build an ecosystem? That's what you're suggesting, right?
Yes, I think that's the.
I don't have a complete answer for that, because it's really complicated and people are trying different ways. So I really like that everybody is trying to understand how to onboard people from outside. During those years, I have learned about many businesses and many theories about that. And it really depends. If your product, say, is for strong Bitcoiners only, I mean, it's a niche, but it's a niche very powerful. There is a word of mouth, and it's going to work. If you want to onboard people from outside, you don't want to compromise, of course, your ethics and other things, but you have to find a way to educate that target before, or make things very easy. So one thing that is changing, it wasn't like that. Right now, there is a strong focus on the user experience. A wallet is usable. It's so easy usable. It wasn't like that. So we want to make things easier in the way, not in the way that they are centralized and they are efficient because they are centralized, for example, but we want to make them close enough from the experience they have with other similar apps or whatever. So they are not scared. People outside, they want to try, but never compromise the fact that there is a good privacy, the code is open source, and you're going not to scam and going away with the money of the people that invest in your products. Of course, that is not the way. From what I see, nobody is doing that. They are trying to be very creative in onboarding people. And so, for example, I was telling also George, that I'm very happy of all the work that Love is Bitcoin they are doing because they are finding a new way to communicate. I strongly believe that communication is important, and we react differently, and a strong pop communication but never compromise the message is what is done by Love is Bitcoin every day. Is pop, is about meme, is about being very present. It's very different from the communication and marketing of other brands. It works because it's yeah, as you can see, we are all here because of that. It's in a great experiment. We all come from different worlds, but once again, not at the expenses of compromise the core business and our ethics.
In the case of Nodal, there is not really such a situation because people outside of Bitcoin will not run a full Bitcoin node, so it doesn't make sense to try to sell to them. On the host for coin side, the story is a little different because we only use Bitcoin as an anonymous, even if it's not a payment system. And wars and censorship happens in the world, and actually we have a lot of people from countries where internet is censored coming to rent a virtual server from us to have a VPN outside of their country. So it happened accidentally. It was posted on some forum in one of these countries. And yeah, that's how we got a lot of new customers outside of any Bitcoin space. And actually, these people are not Bitcoiners at all. They are just buying Bitcoin to pay for service, mostly on chain. So they are paying like 20 euros of fees for a 10 euro transaction right now. We are trying to push them to Lightning, but yeah, they're just buying on an exchange and just to pay for the service. So yeah, it's very hard to make them become Bitcoiners and understand how it works and why it works. Like we get a lot of support messages like I paid and the money didn't come to my account. What happens? Your transaction didn't confirm yet. What does it mean? It didn't confirm yet. No, so yeah, it's a funny story.
I think what Mayor was saying on the previous talk here, I mean, to explain Bitcoin to a no-coiner, let's say, it's quite complicated, especially when you introduce them. Nowadays, you have even like Chrome extensions for a wallet, but before you have to, you know, to create your own wallet, and it was now. I mean, 2 clicks you have your wallet, and it's the UI. It's a little bit better now, but still, it's quite complicated to explain. Like, hey, your money is in Bitcoin, and then it changes price according to the dollar and everything. So for our business, it's quite hard to enroll no coiners, but we are trying to create different. We have a blog in the company, and we are trying to give like really easy to read tips for storing your coins, for like you know, beginner tips, and get positioned about this information in the web. So we release one post every week about like tutorials of how to take care of your coins, what is a miner, what actually we do, and in that way, people that is actually looking for the information can get some reliable information, and then if they decide, they can try us or have a book a call for more questions. But that's how we try to enroll people that has no experience with Bitcoin. That's one of it.
It's a very good approach for onboarding people, but how about when a company that is a traditional one, like oil and gas? I'm also an engineer. I used to work consultants for many years, like steel and stuff like this. How about when a business that is a traditional one, like a car industry or I don't know, a recruitment agency or whatever, they want to get in the Bitcoin world? Okay, you ready for that?
Actually, it's because we had conversations, especially Mexico, and well, in time I was in Venezuela, you can see the flare gas, the flares burning gas, right? So one, and we're not the first. There's already a couple of miners doing it. So they got into an alliance with either landfill companies that they throw waste and they just compact it and put the flares for the methane to go up, or exploration like oil and gas exploration companies that they are burning just this natural gas, and then instead of burning that gas, they connect the compressor, they generate electricity, and then they mine with this flare gas. So when you talk with companies, all the time is about profit. What can I do? Or you're saying, man, you're just burning dollars, because it's natural gas. Give it to me, and then we share the split. So it's only talk about what something good for them, and they will do it. But this is a very good opportunity. There is already a couple of companies in the States doing with the landfill, especially with city councils. They got into a deal with the city council, and they just, I mean, it's a little bit of EPC for the engineering and the connecting the compressor and the generator for then creating electricity. But it's a very good use of burnt gas. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying and failing to convince my fiat hosting customers who run e-commerce websites to at least accept Bitcoin, and telling them that I'm sure there are people ready to pay for your products in Bitcoin if you start accepting Bitcoin payments. But yeah, but volatility, blah, 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 and taxes, and yeah. So it's hard to convince people who don't want to be convinced.
So you didn't manage to convince them?
Not yet, not a single one. But I'm still trying.
That's good. I cannot stop it, but I think it's so yeah. One way to convince them it's to make show that the cash flow in some way is going to be interesting in the long term, not in short term. If you get to that point, they could be interested, and also you can make them understand that it's a good marketing move because you're going to be inside a Bitcoin map, so your services is going to be could be attraction for Bitcoiners, and so maybe you can reach a target you never thought about, only putting I accept Bitcoin somewhere. And I know also providing some sort of a legal coverage. Now we have a lot of people that are doing that since years, so it's not that difficult. Of course, you have to have a lawyer that know about the legislation of that place. For example, I personally know 2-3 people that are doing that in Italy. So that's also very effective because otherwise they are going scared to do something completely shady. So it's a good marketing move, and everything is covered on this part. That's something that kind of work most of the time in my experience if they are already kind of convinced.
Okay, thank you for this. I also try to do the same, like telling them that they're opening up to a new market, and if we put somewhere we accept Bitcoin, it's going to provide a new stream of income, and because they are going to apply to a whole new market. But okay, there comes the legislation issue and where the company is incorporated. We're not going to go into this because then we would be talking for another 2 hours. I'm not even going to ask you where your companies are incorporated because it's another 2-hour long conversation. And because I promised to keep this short for you before the drinks and the change your tournament, I just want one like very short closing remark from all 3 of you guys about your experience like doing business in Bitcoin and making a living out of it. Like really making a living for you and your family.
So if you want to start a profitable Bitcoin business, jump into your time machine, go back to 2012, 13, mine a shitload of Bitcoin, and then spend them for running your company.
That's so true. Yeah. Well, I think, and in general, I think all businesses, if you have the idea, I don't think you will find the perfect scenario that you want to launch. So when you think you have the raw idea and you already run the numbers, so just go for it. I would say just go for it. And at the beginning, it will be difficult, but then slowly you are already there, you already invested or your time and everything. So you just have to polish it. That's the only way. And you already, maybe you quit your job. So you have just to jump on this. Maybe the first months or the first project is not profitable. That also has happened to me. But then You get this experience, and then you just have to do it again until you succeed. I mean, the only thing is never give up and just continue working. That's it.
But that's goes with every business.
Yeah.
Like the first year it's always shit, right?
The added value with Bitcoin, I say, and one example, the Bitrefill guys, for example, is you they offer you maybe sometimes 2 for 1 or a discount on let's say PlayStation cards, and like in Mexico, the most of the business of Bitrefill is telephone cards like for phone and gaming cards like uh, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox. And the reason why is they add an added value to the customers. So you get more credits with paying with sats than going to the store. So maybe the trick there is to give an added value to the client that is like, oh, fuck, I should better spend Bitcoin right now because I will have something extra. So it's maybe to look this something extra.
My 2 cents, which are not mine actually. It is a quote from Bob Barnett from Barefoot Mining. I was in South Carolina and he was presenting a strawberries mining farm, and he told us, I want to do the best for Bitcoin, and in doing that, I know for certain I'm doing the best for my company too. I love this idea. So he built everything around that. He chose the right team with the right incentive, with the right goals. So start from a very good product where a very good Bitcoin mindset, and probably also profits will come if you have the right people, great minds. I mean, Bitcoiners are amazing people with great skills. So we are going to, we are still subverting all the rules, also business rule. So choose the right people. You figure out a way. Bitcoin can be very creative. Go in the direction of doing the best for Bitcoin. And I think probably in short term, you're going to face some adversity. But in the long term, you're going to win, also because of the fact that Bitcoin is going to increase on the value. So it's that easy.
Okay, thank you guys. We are not going to accept questions because I guess we are being pressed by time, and I see everybody in the audience like feeling cold and getting ready to grab some alcohol. I think we're gonna thank you all. Thank you all guys for joining us. I think Francis is next with a chain duel. No? Oh, we are already doing the tournament. So Francis is running the tournament. So before we invite everybody to grab a drink and join the tournament, we are all going to thank George for organizing this and being the big visionary behind that. Thank you for being here for making this happen. And also we want to thank Nina and Natalie for organizing this as well. Nina, Natalie, where are you guys? No? Okay. And yeah, thank you all for being here. It was a pleasure meeting you all. And George, maybe you want to say a few closing remarks?
Yeah, just thank you all guys for being here. This has been amazing, and now is when the party starts. So that that was just leading up to this, because this is why we came here, right? Okay. So now grab a drink, go to the chain duel tournament, win some sats, and let's go and enjoy. DJ Stackalot, who we have no idea who he is. He's an anonymous person. Okay, that's it. Thank you all.
Come on, guys, I need players. Let's compete.
Yeah, because we recorded like three different audio, one from the microphone on the stage, one from that one, and the other one from the bar.
Yeah. Let's play again. Let's play again. Time to play again.
Oh, it's just Bluetooth. Yeah. There are the receiver.
This
No, I show you. There is this one for the iPhone, the other one with USB-C.
I saw the
Yeah, no, also for this USB-C, or also with the jack if we have a camera.
Can I have, so this
Yeah.
transmits and you put
Yeah.
the audio, and you can record with the iPhone video.
Yeah.
But you also play it. Let's go.
Just plug into your iPhone.
What is the name of the?
Holy Land. I can.
No, it's not.
No, it's this one. Holy Land. But I can send you.
Oh, maybe I can give you.
They are called, yeah. Only Land.
Only.
Only.
So I needed to redirect them.
Yeah, because it's different. There is the bundle with everything. This one. This is the bundle with every.
Guys, I need to do an interview with you before you close.
All right. Yeah, that's inside
You are
space.
already streaming?
Okay.